"Get out," my sister hissed, her diamond ring catching the light as blood trickled down my cheek. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone." I stood frozen, my hand pressed against my stinging face, as every eye in the bridal salon turned to stare. The $8,000 wedding dress my sister was trying on? I had paid for it. The $24,000 venue deposit? My credit card. The photographer, the caterer, the hand-calligraphed invitations, all funded by me. But as I walked out of that salon, something inside me finally snapped. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and hovered my finger over one button. Cancel card. 3 taps later, I watched through the window as my sister's perfect world crumbled in real time. The consultant's face as the payment declined. My sister's shock. The manager asking for the dress back. It was the most satisfying moment of my life. Upbeat intro music. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another episode of Pure Revenge Stories. I'm so grateful you've chosen to spend your time with me today. To my loyal subscribers, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support means everything. Before we dive into today's story, I just want to say a quick prayer for you all. May your path today be filled with unexpected blessings. May you have the courage to set boundaries with those who drain you, the wisdom to recognize your own worth, and the strength to walk away from relationships that no longer serve you. Amen. Now, let's get into this wild story about a woman who finally stopped funding someone else's fairy tale and started living her own. My name is Avery. I'm 29 and an architectural project manager. Growing up, I was always the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who did everything right, and somehow, that was never enough. My sister Jordan, 2 years older, was our parents' golden child. The prettier one, the more charismatic one, the one with potential. While I worked nights at the campus library to pay my tuition, Jordan partied through college on our parents' dime. When she came home with CS and DS, Mom would say, "At least you're having fun, sweetie." Meanwhile, my straight as barely warranted a nod. "Not everyone can be as boring as you, Avery," Jordan would tease at family dinners, making everyone laugh while I smiled tightly, playing along as always. After college, when I landed my first architecture job, my starting salary was modest, but I managed it carefully. I had a plan: work hard, save aggressively, buy my own place by 30. I clipped coupons, packed lunches, said no to vacations. Every extra dollar went into my savings account. Meanwhile, Jordan bounced between careers. First marketing. It's just not creative enough for me. Then event planning. The clients are too demanding. Finally settling on luxury real estate. The commission potential is insane. Jordan just needs a little help getting established, Mom would explain when they wrote another check to fund one of her ventures. She's a big picture person. Each of her businesses failed, one after another. But somehow, I was always the one who ended up feeling like the failure. At family gatherings, relatives would fawn over Jordan's stories of showing multi-million-dollar properties to celebrities, while I'd get the obligatory, "How's work, Avery?" Fine, I'd say, not bothering to mention the promotion I'd just received or the major project I was leading. No one would care anyway. Then came Blake Harrington. Jordan met him at a charity gala she'd talked her way into. Old money, family connections, a job at a prestigious financial firm. When she flashed the 3-carat diamond engagement ring at Sunday dinner, you'd have thought she'd single-handedly cured cancer. Can you believe it? Mom squealed, grabbing Jordan's hand to examine the ring for the 5th time. My daughter, marrying into the Harrington family. Dad beamed with pride. Blake's father plays golf with the governor, you know. I smiled and offered appropriate congratulations while doing mental calculations of how many years of my salary that ring represented. "We're thinking a June wedding," Jordan announced. "Small and intimate. Maybe just 300 people." I choked on my water. 300 is intimate? "Well, the Harringtons have a large social circle," Mom said dismissively. "And of course, we want to do it right." That's when the first red flag appeared. "Blake's trust fund is tied up until he's 35, Jordan explained, picking at her salad. And there's some temporary issue with his year-end bonus. So we might need a little help with the initial deposits. Dad's smile faltered. Well, Princess, your mother and I are still recovering from helping you with the real estate licensing and that office space last year. Jordan's face fell dramatically. But Daddy, this is my wedding. The Harringtons will be there. We can't look, you know. She left the implication hanging. That's when all eyes turned to me. Avery, Mom began in that tone I knew all too well. You've always been so good with money. And it's not like you're saving for anything important right now. Actually, I said, thinking of the down payment I was close to completing. I'm looking at condos downtown. Jordan rolled her eyes. You can get a condo anytime. I'm getting married to Blake Harrington. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our family. Just the engagement party, Dad urged. A small loan. Once Blake's bonus comes through, you'll get it all back with interest. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But 30 years of conditioning doesn't break in an instant. How much? I asked. Jordan named a figure that made me wince, but wasn't impossible. I agreed, telling myself it was just this once. That was the beginning. The engagement party turned into the venue deposit. The venue deposit turned into the photographer's retainer. The photographer turned into the florist, the caterer, the wedding planner. Each time, there was a reason. Blake's bonus was delayed. There was a mix-up with his expense account. His parents were covering the honeymoon, so they couldn't help with this part. For months and $24,000 later, I was sitting in my apartment looking at real estate listings for places I could no longer afford when Jordan called. I need you at Elysium Bridal tomorrow at 2, she said without preamble. The final fitting for my dress. I have a client meeting. Reschedule it, she cut me off. This is important, Avery. I need honest feedback, not just what the bridesmaids will say. I started to argue, but she'd already hung up. That night, I stared at my bank account, the numbers blurring before my eyes. My savings, the result of years of careful planning and sacrifice, had been decimated. The temporary loan had turned into an endless drain, with no sign of Blake's mythical bonus appearing to save the day. It'll be fine, I told myself, the lie sounding hollow even to my own ears. After the wedding, they'll pay me back. It's just a few more weeks. Elysium Bridal was exactly as pretentious as the name suggested. Crystal chandeliers hung from coffered ceilings. Champagne flowed freely, even though it was barely past noon. Women I vaguely recognized as Jordan's friends lounged on velvet settees, scrolling through their phones with expressions of practiced boredom. Avery, Jordan called from her perch on a circular platform, surrounded by 3 attendants adjusting the voluminous skirt of her dress. Finally, tell me what you think. Is the train too much? Mom thinks it might be too much for the venue. Our mother hovered nearby, glass of champagne in hand, nodding anxiously. The dress was a masterpiece of excess. Layers of silk and tulle, hand-embroidered with crystals that caught the light with every breath Jordan took. The bodice was fitted to perfection, the sweetheart neckline showcasing her collarbones. The train extended at least 6 feet behind her, a cascade of ivory fabric that would require its own attendant just to manage down the aisle. It's something, I said, setting my purse down and accepting a flute of champagne I didn't want. Something. Jordan's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. What does that mean? It's beautiful, I amended, taking a sip to avoid saying more. The salon director approached, tablet in hand. Miss Reynolds, we'll need to process the final payment today to release the gown. With the rush alterations and the custom value selected, the balance comes to $8,250. My stomach dropped. The original quote had been $6,000, which was already obscene. Jordan waved her hand dismissively. Just put it on the card we have on file. Avery, can you help me with the veil? I want to see the full effect. The salon director disappeared with a nod, and one of the attendants handed me a length of delicate lace adorned with tiny pearl beads. I stepped onto the platform behind Jordan, careful not to step on the dress. Make sure you don't mess up my hair, Jordan instructed as I lifted the veil. The crystal pins are already set for the ceremony. As I adjusted the veil over her carefully styled blonde waves, I caught my own reflection in the three-way mirror. My simple navy dress, purchased on sale 3 years ago. My sensible pumps, resold twice. The dark circles under my eyes from staying up late working on a project to earn extra money that was going straight into the black hole of Jordan's wedding. Something shifted inside me. A quiet voice that had been whispering for years suddenly rose to a shout. Enough. Jordan, I said quietly, still holding the veil. We need to talk about the money. Her eyes met mine in the mirror, narrowing slightly. What about it? I can't keep doing this. The dress, the venue, all of it, I've spent almost $25,000 on your wedding. When is Blake's bonus actually coming through? The salon suddenly seemed quieter, though the background music still played. I felt rather than saw our mother tense up nearby. Now is not the time, Avery, Jordan hissed, her smile frozen for the benefit of the attendants. We'll talk about it later. No, we need to talk about it now. Before I put another $8,000 on my credit card. Jordan turned, the movement causing me to drop one corner of the veil. I said, not now, she whispered furiously. You're embarrassing me. I'm embarrassing you? My voice rose slightly. I've drained my savings for your wedding. I've put my entire life on hold. And you can't even have a conversation about paying me back. Oh my God, it's always about money with you, Jordan said, loud enough now that her friends looked up from their phones. It's my wedding day. No, it's your wedding fitting, I corrected. And it's not about money. It's about respect. You promised this was temporary. You promised Blake would pay me back. And he will. Jordan snapped. Why are you being such a bitch about this? Do you not want me to be happy? Our mother appeared at the edge of the platform. Girls, please. This isn't the place. Tell her that, Jordan said, pointing at me. She's the one making a scene over a few dollars. $25,000 is not a few dollars, I said, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. That was my down payment. My future. Oh please, Jordan rolled her eyes dramatically. Your boring little condo downtown? As if that matters compared to my marriage to Blake. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our family, remember? Or are you just jealous because no one wants to marry you? The salon fell completely silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. Our mother's face went white. Jordan, she gasped. Apologize to your sister. But something in me had finally broken. Years of diminishment, of sacrifice, of being the responsible one while watching Jordan take, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. You know what? Keep the dress. Keep the venue. Keep all of it, I said, stepping down from the platform. But you're going to have to find another way to pay for it. I turned to leave, grabbing my purse from the chair. Don't you dare walk out. Jordan shrieked behind me. We're not finished. I kept walking. 3 steps, 4 steps, almost to the door. The sting across my cheek came out of nowhere. Jordan's hand, her massive diamond engagement ring leading the way, made contact with enough force to knock me sideways. I felt a sharp pain, then wetness. When I touched my fingers to my cheek, they came away with a smear of blood. Get out, she hissed, her voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. You're making me look bad in front of everyone. The salon's chandeliers suddenly seemed too bright. Every eye on me as I stood among dresses that cost more than my semester's rent, my hand pressed against my bleeding cheek. Women I barely knew, Jordan's college friends, our extended family, glanced away awkwardly, pretending to study lace patterns and beadwork. Only our mother stared directly at me, her expression not of concern but warning, don't make a scene. But beneath the humiliation burning through my chest was something colder, more focused. Because what my sister didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the black American Express card in Jordan's designer purse was mine. The $24,000 deposit on her fairytale venue, the photographer's retainer, the catering advance, the hand-calligraphed invitations, all paid from my account. I straightened my shoulders, touched the corner of my eye where tears threatened, and walked toward the exit without a word. As the salon door closed behind me, I already had my phone in hand. Banking app open, finger hovering over cancel card. My finger trembled for just a moment. This was the point of no return. Once I did this, there would be no going back to the way things were with my family. No more pretending we were normal. No more playing the role of the reliable one who could be counted on to fix everything. I tapped cancel card. A confirmation screen appeared. Are you sure you want to cancel this card? Any pending authorizations will be declined. I tapped confirm. 3 taps and my sister's entire wedding budget vanished. The screen confirmed, card canceled successfully. The street outside the salon buzzed with Saturday shoppers, none aware of the drama that had just unfolded. I found a quiet spot beside a coffee shop and pressed a tissue to my cheek, the small cut finally stopping its bleeding. The salon's front windows gave me a perfect view inside. Jordan still stood on the pedestal, admiring the hand-beaded gown that cost more than my first car. Our mother hovered nearby, both oblivious to what I'd just done. The consultant approached with a tablet, ready to process the purchase. I waited, heart pounding against my ribs. Jordan handed over my card with the casual entitlement of someone who'd never worried about money, specifically, someone who'd never worried about my money. I watched the consultant swipe once, then again, her professional smile faltering. She whispered something to Jordan, whose face transformed from confusion to disbelief. What do you mean declined? Her voice carried even through the glass. That's impossible. Try it again. The consultant shook her head, pointing at her tablet screen. Jordan turned to our mother, her perfect makeup unable to hide her panic. The salon manager appeared, his expression shifting from deferential to impatient as he extended his hand for the gown Jordan still clutched. I should have felt guilty. Instead, watching my sister's shocked face as her fantasy crumbled felt like oxygen after years underwater. I took a screenshot of the cancellation confirmation and walked away. My phone vibrated before I'd gone 2 blocks. Mother, then Jordan, then mother again. I declined them all, silencing the continuous buzzing as I headed to the subway station. Excuse me? A deep voice called from behind me. Miss? You dropped this. I turned to see a man holding my scarf, which had slipped from my purse in my hurry to escape. He was tall, with warm hazel eyes and a concerned expression that deepened when he saw my face. You're bleeding, he said, handing me the scarf. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said automatically, pressing my fingers to my cheek. It's nothing. He didn't look convinced. There's a coffee shop right there. At least let me get you some ice for that cut. Under normal circumstances, I would have politely declined and hurried away. But something about this day had already broken all my normal patterns. Actually, I said, surprising myself, that would be nice. Thank you. I'm Nate, he said, with a smile that reached all the way to those hazel eyes. Avery, I replied, feeling the first genuine smile of the day form on my lips. My name is Avery. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold sterility of the bridal salon. Nate guided me to a corner table, disappeared briefly, and returned with an ice pack wrapped in a clean dish towel and 2 steaming mugs. I got you a chai latte, he said, setting 1 mug in front of me. It seemed like a better choice than coffee after. Whatever just happened to you. I pressed the makeshift ice pack to my cheek, the cold numbing the sting. How did you know I'd prefer chai? He shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You don't strike me as the black coffee type. Too much edge. That startled a laugh out of me. And what type do I strike you as? He studied me over the rim of his mug. Someone who pretends to have it all together while secretly preferring things a little sweet and spicy. The accuracy of his assessment was unsettling. Are you psychic or something? Observant, he corrected. Occupational hazard. What occupation involves reading strangers in coffee shops? I'm a graphic novelist, he said. I watch people, try to understand what makes them tick. By day, I make espresso drinks downstairs from my apartment to pay the bills. Speaking of which, he nodded toward my cheek. Want to tell me why someone decided to use your face as a punching bag? Should I be looking for a jealous boyfriend around the corner? The absurdity of the question made me laugh again. God, no. Nothing like that. It was my sister, actually. His eyebrows shot up. Family drama? On a Saturday afternoon? Must have been some argument. I hesitated, unsure why I felt compelled to tell this stranger about the most humiliating moment of my life. But something about his direct gaze made me want to be equally direct. My sister slapped me because I refused to keep paying for her wedding, I said bluntly. I've spent nearly $25,000 funding her fairy tale, and when I finally stood up for myself, she left me bleeding in front of her entire bridal party. I expected shock or awkward sympathy. Instead, Nate nodded thoughtfully. And what did you do after that? A small, fierce smile spread across my face. I canceled my credit card, the one she's been using for all the wedding expenses. Right now, she's discovering that her $8,000 dress is staying firmly on the rack. Nate whistled low. That's bold. My smile faltered. It's terrible, isn't it? I should feel guilty. Do you? I considered the question, searching for the remorse that should have been there. No, I admitted. I feel relieved. Like I can finally breathe again. Nate leaned back in his chair, regarding me with new interest. Avery the Bold. I like it. More like Avery the doormat who finally stood up. Hey! His voice grew serious. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you terrible. It makes you human. Some people only learn boundaries when they slam into them face first. I sipped my chai, which was indeed exactly what I needed. How are you so wise, Coffee Shop Nate? Lived experience, he said with a self-deprecating smile. I spent too many years letting my ex drain my creative energy, my finances, my self-worth. Took losing almost everything to learn that lesson. Something about his honesty, offered without expectation, made my shoulders relax for the first time in hours. We talked as our drinks cooled, discovering surprising connections. He'd grown up just 30 minutes from my hometown. We'd both spent summers at the same lake, years apart. He loved architecture, the very field I worked in. I dabbled in illustration, the foundation of his graphic novels. When my phone buzzed for the 20th time, I finally silenced it completely. That's probably the fallout beginning, I explained. Need to deal with it? I shook my head. Not today. Today, I'm having chai with a stranger who was kind enough to notice I was bleeding. His smile lit up his entire face. Well, when you put it that way, how could I possibly compete with a family meltdown? As afternoons stretched into evening, our conversation deepened. Nate told me about his graphic novel series, a noir-style mystery with supernatural elements. I described my latest architectural project, renovating a historic theater downtown. When the cafe began closing, we reluctantly stood to leave. This is going to sound strange, Nate said as we paused outside, the evening air cool against my skin, but I live right upstairs. Would you like to come up for dinner? I make a mean pasta carbonara. The old Avery would have politely declined, made an excuse about early meetings or prior commitments. The old Avery was predictable, reliable, safe. But the woman who had canceled her sister's wedding with 3 taps of her finger was someone new entirely. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself for the second time that day. His apartment was exactly what I'd expect from a graphic novelist, organized chaos. Bookshelves overflowed with graphic novels and art books. A drafting table stood by the window, covered with sketches and ink pens. But the kitchen was spotless, with professional-grade cookware hanging from a ceiling rack. Cooking is my other creative outlet, he explained, tying on an apron with practiced ease. Less pressure than drawing. If a panel doesn't work, I've wasted hours. If pasta doesn't work, I just order pizza. I wandered around his living room while he cooked, examining the artwork on his walls, original comic panels, vintage movie posters, a stunning black and white photograph of the city skyline at dawn. This is beautiful, I said, pointing to the photo. Did you take it? Yeah, from the roof. Building management doesn't exactly allow access, but the super likes my coffee, so he pretends not to notice. Rebellious and talented, I mused. Dangerous combination. He glanced up from the stove, a smile playing at his lips. You have no idea. Dinner was simple but perfect. Creamy carbonara, crusty bread, a bottle of red wine that loosened my tongue, and the knot of tension in my chest. As we ate, I found myself telling him everything. The years of playing second fiddle to Jordan. The financial drain. The dreams I'd put on hold. So what happens now? He asked as we washed dishes side by side, our shoulders occasionally brushing in his small kitchen. After today, I handed him a plate to dry. Honestly, I have no idea. I've never done anything like this before. Like what? Standing up for yourself or having dinner with strange men who pick you up on the street? I laughed, flicking soap suds at him. Both, I guess. He caught my hand, his expression growing serious. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Some people only learn when there are consequences. I've never stood up for myself like that before. How does it feel? His question was gentle, curious. Terrifying, I admitted. And exhilarating. His eyes held mine, and suddenly I was acutely aware of how close we were standing, my hand still in his. Something electric passed between us, a current of possibility. I should go, I said softly, though it was the last thing I wanted. Or you could stay, he countered, equally soft. Just talk, No pressure. The old Avery would have made her excuses and fled. But I was discovering I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd like to stay, I said. Just talk. We moved to his couch, a comfortable, worn leather affair that had clearly seen better days. The wine bottle came with us, and as the night deepened, so did our conversation. He told me about growing up with parents who never quite understood his artistic ambitions. I shared stories of architectural disasters that had become learning experiences. We discovered a mutual love for old noir films and a shared hatred of cilantro. It tastes like soap, we exclaimed in unison, dissolving into laughter. When I finally checked my phone, it was after midnight. 42 missed calls and 27 text messages glared accusingly from the screen. Wow, Nate said, peering over my shoulder. That's a proper meltdown in progress. I should probably deal with this tomorrow, I sighed. Stay, he said suddenly. Not like, I have a spare room. It's my studio, but there's a daybed. It's late, and after everything today. The thought of going back to my empty apartment, alone with the inevitable confrontation looming, was unbearable. Are you sure? Absolutely. Mikasa, Sukasa, and all that. The spare room was small but cozy, walls covered with sketches and reference photos. The daybed was surprisingly comfortable, made up with clean sheets that smelled of lavender detergent. Bathrooms across the hall, Nate said, handing me a t-shirt and boxers. These should work as pajamas. There's a new toothbrush in the medicine cabinet. Thank you, I said, meaning it for more than just the sleeping arrangements. For everything today. He smiled, the expression transforming his face. My pleasure, Avery the Bold. Sleep well. But sleep proved elusive. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. The slap. The blood. The 3 taps that had changed everything. The strange, immediate connection with this man I'd just met. Eventually, I gave up and padded to the kitchen for water. Nate was there, sketching at the counter, a small lamp casting shadows across his concentrated face. He glanced up surprised. Can't sleep, he asked. I shook my head. Too much adrenaline, I think. I get that. After big life moments, my brain refuses to shut down. He pushed a glass of water toward me. Want to see what I'm working on? Sometimes boring other people with my art puts me right to sleep. I moved closer, looking over his shoulder at the sketch. It was a woman, standing outside a storefront, her face a mixture of defiance and uncertainty, one hand on her phone, the other touching her cheek. With a jolt, I realized it was me, outside the bridal salon. You're drawing me? He looked embarrassed. Sorry. Artist brain. Today had all the elements of a perfect opening scene, drama, conflict, a character at a turning point. I should have been unnerved. Instead, I felt oddly flattered. What happens next? In your story. He considered me thoughtfully. That depends on the character. Does she go back to her old life, or does she use this moment to change everything? Our eyes met, and suddenly the small kitchen felt charged with possibility. I was acutely aware of his proximity, the soft cotton of his t-shirt against my skin, the way his gaze dropped briefly to my lips. I think, I said slowly, she changes everything. I'm not sure who moved first. One moment we were standing apart, the next his mouth was on mine, tentative at first, then with growing certainty as I responded. His hand cupped my face gently, thumb brushing over my cheekbone, careful of the small cut that had started this entire unlikely day. Is this okay? He murmured against my lips. In answer, I pressed closer, my arms winding around his neck. The kiss deepened, months of pent-up loneliness and years of putting myself last dissolving in the heat between us. His hands were respectful but insistent, tracing the curve of my waist, the line of my spine. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I don't usually do this, I whispered, forehead pressed against his. What, kiss graphic novelists in their kitchens at 2 a.m.? I laughed softly. Kiss anyone lately. I've been too busy funding someone else's love story to write my own. His expression softened. We can stop. No pressure. But I didn't want to stop. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I was doing exactly what I wanted, with no concern for anyone else's expectations or needs. I don't want to stop, I said, finding courage in his steady gaze. But maybe we could move somewhere more comfortable than your kitchen counter? His smile was slow and beautiful. I think that can be arranged. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, waking me gently. For a moment, I couldn't place where I was. The room wasn't my apartment. The warm body next to me definitely wasn't my extra pillow. Then the events of yesterday crashed back. The salon, the slap, the 3 fateful taps on my phone, and Nate. Especially Nate. He slept peacefully beside me, one arm flung above his head, the other still loosely draped across my waist. Last night had been unexpected. Not just the physical connection, though that had been remarkable in its own right. It was the feeling of being truly seen by someone, perhaps for the first time. I carefully disentangled myself and padded to the bathroom. The woman in the mirror looked different somehow. Same brown hair, same gray eyes, but something had shifted in her expression. The perpetual furrow between my brows had smoothed, replaced by a certain calmness I didn't recognize. My phone, which I'd plugged in but kept on silent, showed 37 missed calls and 24 texts. I took a deep breath and began reading them, each message more desperate than the last. 10:15 a.m. Mom, the salon called. What did you do to the card? 10:22 a.m. Jordan, fix this now. 10:47 a.m. Mom, Jordan is devastated. How could you embarrass us like this? 11:30 a.m. Jordan, the venue is threatening to cancel. This isn't funny anymore. 12:10 p.m. Mom, your father is furious. Call us immediately. 10:05 p.m. Jordan, Blake's parents are asking questions. You're ruining my life. The final text had arrived at 3:42 a.m. If you don't fix this by tomorrow, don't bother coming to the wedding. I laughed out loud at that one. Without my money, there wouldn't be a wedding. Something funny? Nate appeared in the doorway, hair adorably mussed, wearing only pajama bottoms. The sight of his bare chest, which I'd explored thoroughly the night before, sent a pleasant warmth through my body. Just the spectacular meltdown happening on my phone, I explained, showing him the last message. He read it and snorted. Bold of her to assume there will be a wedding for you to attend. Exactly. I set the phone down. I should probably deal with this today. After breakfast, he insisted, pulling me into a kiss that quickly threatened to derail any plans for the day. I make pancakes almost as well as I make other things. I blushed, remembering exactly how skilled he was at other things. Pancakes sound perfect. We were midway through breakfast when my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Is this Avery Reynolds? A man's voice, professional but strained. Yes. Who's calling? This is Warren from Westlake Manor. We're trying to reach Jordan Reynolds regarding her outstanding balance of $32,450 due today. Her number goes straight to voicemail, and she listed you as an alternate contact. I closed my eyes, picturing the magnificent estate Jordan had selected. Stone archways, manicured gardens, capacity for 300 guests she'd insisted were absolutely necessary. I'm sorry, Warren. I'm no longer involved with my sister's wedding finances. I see. His tone shifted slightly. Well, if you speak with her, please let her know that without today's scheduled payment, we'll be forced to release the date to another client. We have 3 couples on our waiting list. I'll pass that along. After hanging up, I stared at my half-eaten pancakes, reality intruding on what had been a perfect morning. Venue. Nate guest, refilling my coffee. Yep. Apparently there's a $32,000 payment due today. I shook my head in disbelief. That's more than I make in 6 months. And they called you instead of her? I'm listed as an alternate contact. Probably because I was the one making all the payments up until now. Nate whistled low. The fallout is officially beginning. I picked up my phone again, this time to block my parents' and Jordan's numbers. As I did, a new text came through from a number I recognized. Blake, Jordan's fiancé. Avery, it's Blake. Things are crazy here. Jordan says you canceled some card and now everything's falling apart. I don't understand what's going on. My parents are asking questions I can't answer. Can you call me? His confusion sounded genuine. I typed out a text rather than calling. Blake, Jordan told everyone your family was covering wedding costs. In reality, I've been paying for everything on my credit cards. She slapped me in public yesterday, so I canceled the cards. I'm done being her secret bank account. He responded almost immediately. Wait, what? She told us your parents were paying. I showed Nate the exchange. The plot thickens, he said, eyebrows raised. So no one knew you were bankrolling this thing? Apparently not. The realization was both vindicating and infuriating. She's been lying to everyone. What happens now? I turned off my phone completely, suddenly needing space from the drama. Now, I finish these excellent pancakes. Then I go home and figure out how to rebuild my savings and my life. Something flickered across Nate's face, disappointment, maybe? Right. Of course. But I added, surprising myself again, I'd like to see you again. If you want. His smile returned, brighter than before. I was hoping you'd say that. Dinner tonight? There's a great Thai place on Maple. I'd like that. Back at my apartment, the silence felt different. Not lonely, as it sometimes had, but peaceful. I spent the day cleaning, organizing, taking stock of my finances. The damage was severe, but not irreparable. If I was careful, worked some overtime, and postponed the down payment another year, I could recover. As I got ready for dinner with Nate, I examined my reflection critically. The cut on my cheek was small but visible, a reminder of yesterday's turning point. Rather than try to hide it with makeup, I left it exposed, a badge of honor rather than a mark of shame. I chose a dress I'd bought months ago but never worn, teal blue, slightly daring, definitely not the kind of practical outfit the old Avery would have selected. The woman in the mirror looked back at me with clear eyes and a slight, confident smile. Nice to meet you, I whispered to her. Let's see where we go from here. The Thai restaurant was bustling with Saturday night energy, but Nate had somehow secured a quiet corner table. He stood when he saw me, his appreciative gaze making my skin warm. You look amazing, he said, pulling out my chair. That color suits you. Thanks. I've had this dress forever, but never had the courage to wear it. Well, Avery the Bold suits you too. He ordered a bottle of wine for us, then leaned forward conspiratorially. So, any new developments in Weddingmageddon? I laughed at his term for the situation. I've kept my phone off most of the day. Mental health break. Smart. Though I bet your inbox is reaching critical mass. Probably. But for once, it's not my emergency to fix. I lifted my wine glass. To letting people solve their own problems. He clinked his glass against mine. I'll drink to that. Dinner was even better than I'd expected. The food was spectacular, spicy curries, fragrant rice, flavors that danced on my tongue. But it was the conversation that made the evening magical. Nate wasn't what I expected. Behind the easy smile and casual charm was a mind that challenged mine. Over our shared mango sticky rice dessert, he told me about his journey to becoming a graphic novelist. I was in finance, if you can believe it, he said, gesturing with his spoon. Suit and tie 60-hour weeks, the whole corporate nightmare. What changed? My father died. His expression grew serious. Heart attack at 52. Dropped dead at his desk after 30 years at the same company. Never took a vacation, never pursued his dreams of traveling. He kept saying someday until someday ran out. He pushed the rice around his plate. At the funeral, his boss gave this speech about what a dedicated employee he'd been, and I realized that was the best thing anyone could say about him. Not that he'd lived fully or followed his passions. So you quit. The next day, cashed out my 401k, paid the penalty, and spent a year traveling. When I came back, I started drawing again, something I'd loved as a kid but abandoned for practical career choices. That's brave, I said, genuinely impressed. Most people never make that leap. It wasn't bravery so much as fear, he admitted. Fear of ending up like him. He reached across the table, taking my hand. What about you? What would you do if you weren't paying for someone else's happiness? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. I've spent so long being responsible, I'm not sure I remember how to dream for myself. Try, he encouraged. If money and expectations weren't factors, what would Avery want? I closed my eyes, letting myself imagine possibilities that had long been buried. I'd apply for the West Arc Fellowship. It's this prestigious international program for architects, a year traveling to study historic restoration techniques across Europe. I opened my eyes, embarrassed by how whimsical it sounded. Silly dream, right? Not at all, Nate said, squeezing my hand. Why haven't you applied? The application fee is steep, and you need a portfolio of original design concepts focused on restoration. I haven't had time to put that together between work and... I gestured vaguely, encompassing the entire wedding fiasco. Between work and being everyone's ATM, he finished for me. Exactly. His gaze was thoughtful, assessing. So, what's stopping you now? The question hung between us, full of possibility. What was stopping me? For the first time in years, I had no good answer. After dinner, we walked the long way back to our building, the late summer air warm against our skin. When we reached my door, he made no move to invite himself in, just smiled and said he'd had a great time. I surprised myself by reaching for his hand. Do you want to come in? For coffee or something? His fingers tightened around mine. Are you sure? You're going through a lot right now. The concern in his eyes made something inside me soften and heat simultaneously. I'm sure. The first kiss was tentative, a question asked and answered as my apartment door closed behind us. The second was bolder, his hands finding my waist, pulling me closer. I've wanted to do that since you first ordered that ridiculous double-shot vanilla oat milk latte with cinnamon, he murmured against my lips. That's oddly specific. You're oddly specific. His smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. It's kind of irresistible. What followed wasn't the desperate collision of bodies I'd imagined in my rare moments of fantasy. Instead, Nate took his time, his fingers tracing the curve of my cheek, the line of my neck, as if memorizing me. Each touch deliberate, each kiss deeper than the last. When my dress joined his shirt on the floor, his gaze held mine, seeking permission before his lips found the sensitive skin below my collarbone. I trembled under his attention and used to being the center of someone's world. You're beautiful, Avery, he whispered, the words brushing against my skin like a caress. Let me show you how beautiful. In my bedroom, illuminated only by the city lights filtering through the blinds, we moved together with increasing urgency. His hands explored and awakened parts of me I'd neglected in my years of self-sacrifice. When he finally entered me, my name on his lips like a prayer, I felt myself breaking and reforming into someone stronger, someone who could want and take and give without diminishing herself. Afterward, lying in the tangle of sheets with my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, I felt no regret. Only a curious sense of rightness, as if standing up for myself had opened a door to possibilities I'd never allowed myself to consider. "Stay," I said, surprising myself again. His arms tightened around me. I wasn't planning on going anywhere. We slept deeply, wrapped in each other, and when morning came, I reluctantly turned my phone back on. The barrage was immediate: texts, voicemails, emails, all demanding my attention, my money, my compliance. But one message stood out from the rest. A text from a cousin who was part of Jordan's bridal party. OMG, what happened? Blake's mom is telling everyone Jordan lied about who is paying for the wedding. His grandmother is furious. I showed it to Nate, who read it over my shoulder as he handed me coffee. "The plot thickens," he said with a low whistle. "Blake's family is old money, right? They probably don't take kindly to being misrepresented." "Definitely not." I couldn't help the small smile that formed. The truth is finally coming out. How does that feel? I considered the question, searching my feelings. Vindicating. And a little sad. I never wanted to destroy her wedding. I just wanted to stop being used. Those two things became the same thing because of her choices, not yours, Nate pointed out gently. Don't take responsibility for her consequences. I leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. When did you get so wise? I read a lot of self-help books after my ex emptied my bank account and moved to Bali with her yoga instructor. His tone was light, but I sensed the real pain beneath. Is that really what happened? He nodded, his expression rueful. Classic tale. I was working 80-hour weeks in finance while she found herself on my dime. Came home one day to an empty apartment and a note. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "Don't be." Best thing that ever happened to me in retrospect. Forced me to reevaluate everything. He kissed the top of my head. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. Like getting slapped in a bridal salon? Exactly like that. We spent the day together, a lazy Sunday of takeout and talking and making love in the afternoon sunlight. It should have felt too fast, too intense, but instead it felt like finding a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. When my phone rang again with another unknown number, I almost didn't answer. But something told me this call was important. "Hello, Avery? This is Elizabeth Harrington, Blake's mother." My stomach dropped. Blake's mother, the matriarch of one of the city's oldest families, a woman whose charity galas were legendary and whose disapproval could sink social aspirations permanently. "Mrs. Harrington," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to understand exactly what's been happening with my son's wedding finances." Her tone was perfectly controlled, aristocratic. Nate's eyes widened. He mouthed, "Blake's mom," and I nodded, putting the call on speaker. "It's complicated," I began. "I have time," she replied crisply. "And I prefer clarity to complication." So I told her everything. The months of payments, the empty promises, the public slap that had finally pushed me to stop. She listened without interrupting. "I see," she said when I finished. "Thank you for your candor. The Harringtons value honesty above all else. It seems my future daughter-in-law does not share that value." "I never meant to cause problems for Blake," I said, feeling a strange need to defend him. He seemed genuinely unaware of the financial arrangements. "Oh, I'm quite certain he was," Mrs. Harrington said dryly. "My son has many qualities, but financial acumen isn't among them. However, dishonesty is something our family cannot abide." After we hung up, Nate let out a low whistle. That was intense. "What do you think happens now?" "I have no idea," I admitted. "But I have a feeling Jordan's perfect wedding just got a lot more complicated." "Good," Nate said firmly. "Some lessons need to be expensive to stick." He pulled me close, his warmth anchoring me. "Now, about that fellowship application." I looked up surprised. "What about it?" "I think Avery the Bold should apply." In fact, I think she should start working on her portfolio tonight. Tonight? But no buts, he interrupted gently. You've spent too long putting your dreams last. It's time to put them first. Looking into his eyes, I felt something unfamiliar take root in my chest. Hope, yes, but also determination. For so long, I defined myself by what I gave to others. Maybe it was time to discover who I could be when I invested in myself. Okay, I said, feeling the rightness of the decision settle into my bones. Let's do it. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Nate had left for his early shift at the coffee shop with a lingering kiss and a promise to check in later. I'd taken the day off work, my first personal day in over a year, to deal with the fallout and to start researching the fellowship application. The calm was shattered at 10:30 a.m. when my phone rang. Blake's name appeared on the screen. Hello, I answered cautiously. Avery. His voice sounded hollow, drained. We need to talk. I'm listening. He took a deep breath. The wedding's off. My parents spoke with Jordan this morning. He paused, searching for words. They said they couldn't welcome someone into the family who would build our marriage on a foundation of lies. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Was she always like this? He asked finally. Did I miss something I should have seen? She's always been the family princess, I answered. And someone has always paid the price for her crown. The silence stretched between us, heavy with realization. We're officially broken up, Blake added after a moment. I returned her ring yesterday. Whatever bonus I was expecting at work came through last week, but it was nowhere near enough to cover all these expenses. I had no idea what she'd committed us to. I'm sorry, Blake. And I was sorry he'd been caught in Jordan's web of deceit. Sorry the relationship he thought he had was built on lies. My mother showed me the venue contract, he continued. Your signature was on all the paperwork as the financially responsible party. Did you know that? My stomach dropped. No. I knew I was making the payments, but Jordan said it was temporary until your bonus came through. I never signed anything giving her permission to use my name. That's what I thought. His sigh was heavy with resignation. Look, I want you to know I had no part in this. I would never have agreed to put you in that position. I believe you. And strangely, I did. Blake had always seemed genuinely nice, if somewhat oblivious. What happens now? Now, he gave a humorless laugh. Now I try to explain to my family why I was engaged to someone who would do this. And you. He paused. You should probably brace yourself. Jordan isn't taking this well. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. It was over. The wedding that had drained my savings and dominated my life for months was canceled. The relief I felt should have been pure, but it was tinged with a strange sadness, not for Jordan, but for the family relationship that would likely never recover from this. My phone pinged with a text from Nate. How are you holding up? I typed back, wedding's officially off. Blake just called. His response was immediate, coming over after my shift. Need anything? Ice cream? Wine? Ceremonial burning of bridesmaid dresses? Despite everything, I smiled. Just you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. You've got me. Always. It was too soon for such promises, too intense for a relationship just days old. Yet it didn't feel wrong or rushed. It felt like finding shelter in an unexpected place. The doorbell rang at noon, jolting me from my thoughts. I hadn't buzzed anyone up, which meant it was either maintenance or... Through the peephole, I saw my mother. I considered not answering, pretending I wasn't home. But this confrontation was inevitable, and perhaps it was better to have it on my territory, where I could ask her to leave if necessary. When I opened the door, she brushed past me without waiting for an invitation, her expensive perfume leaving a cloud in her wake. She looked impeccable as always, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, designer outfit freshly pressed. But her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her handbag. How could you? She demanded without preamble. Do you have any idea what you've done? I closed the door calmly. Hello to you too, Mom. Don't you dare be flip with me, young lady. Your sister is absolutely devastated. The Harringtons have broken the engagement. Her entire future is ruined. I moved to the kitchen, putting the counter between us. Would you like some coffee, Mom? This might be a long conversation. I don't want coffee. She dropped her bag on the counter with a thud. I want an explanation for why you would sabotage your own sister's happiness out of, what? Jealousy? Spite? The accusation stung, but I kept my voice level. I didn't sabotage anything. I simply stopped paying for it. After you committed to helping. You gave your word, Avery. I agreed to a small loan for the engagement party. Not $25,000 for the entire wedding. She waved a dismissive hand. It's just money. Your sister's happiness. It's my money, I interrupted, heat finally entering my voice. Money I worked for. Money I saved. Money for MY future, which I put on hold to fund her fantasy. That's what family does, Avery. We support each other. Support goes both ways, Mom. When has Jordan ever supported me? When have any of you? Her face registered genuine confusion. What are you talking about? We've always supported you. Really? Did you come to my master's graduation? Have you ever helped me financially, the way you've bailed Jordan out repeatedly? Did you even ask if I was okay after she slapped me hard enough to draw blood? My mother's expression shifted, discomfort replacing indignation. That was unfortunate. Jordan was under a lot of stress. Unfortunate, I repeated flatly. My sister physically assaulted me in public, and the best you can say is it was unfortunate? You're exaggerating. It was just a slap. I walked to my bathroom, retrieved my phone, and pulled up the photo I'd taken Saturday evening, my cheek with the small cut from Jordan's ring, already bruising around the edges. I showed it to her silently. She glanced at it, then away quickly. Well, I'm sure she didn't mean to hurt you. She meant exactly that, Mom. And you stood there and did nothing. A heavy silence fell between us, decades of unspoken resentment and hurt filling the space. What do you want me to say? She finally asked, deflating slightly. That Jordan has always been difficult? That we've spent years managing her moods and expectations? We did what we had to do for family harmony. At my expense. She sighed, suddenly looking older than her years. What's done is done, Avery. The question is, what are you going to do now? The Harringtons are furious. Blake has returned the ring. Jordan is inconsolable. You have to fix this. I stared at her, incredulous. Fix this? How exactly am I supposed to fix a relationship built on lies? You could talk to Blake, explain it was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Jordan lied to everyone, to me, to Blake, to his family, to you and Dad. She committed fraud by signing my name to financial documents. Those are crimes, Mom, not misunderstandings. My mother's face paled. Surely you wouldn't press charges against your own sister. No, I conceded. But I'm not going to rescue her either. Not this time. She picked up her bag, clutching it like a shield. Your father and I are very disappointed in you, Avery. Family should come first. I agree, I said quietly. But for the first time in my life, I'm realizing that I'm part of this family too. And it's time someone considered my needs for a change. She left without another word, the door closing behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded more final than a slam. I sank onto my couch, emotionally drained. Part of me had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that she would finally see things from my perspective. That she would acknowledge the years of inequity, the constant expectation that I would sacrifice while Jordan took. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a photo of Jordan, face swollen from crying, curled in her childhood bed. Underneath, my mother had written, "This is what you've done to your sister." I deleted the message without responding, then blocked the new number. When Nate arrived an hour later, he found me surrounded by fellowship application materials, determinedly working on my portfolio concept. Productive day? He asked, setting down a bag of takeout. Very. I gestured to my mother's unfinished coffee on the counter. Had a visit from Mom. Apparently, I'm a terrible person who needs to fix what I've broken. Nate's expression darkened. And what did you say to that guilt trip? That I'm done fixing Jordan's messes. I stood, stretching my cramped muscles. It didn't go over well. He pulled me into a hug, his solid warmth exactly what I needed. "I'm proud of you," he murmured into my hair. "Standing your ground isn't easy, especially with family." I leaned into him, drawing strength from his steadiness. It's strange. I feel awful and liberated at the same time. "That's how it is when you stop carrying someone else's burdens," he said. "The guilt is real, but so is the freedom." Later that evening, as we lay tangled together in my bed, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder, Nate asked the question I'd been avoiding. "What happens now? With your family, I mean." I sighed, nestling closer to his warmth. "Honestly, I don't know. Mom expects me to cave eventually. I always have before." "And will you?" "Cave." I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "I can't go back to being their ATM. But I don't want to lose them completely either." "Then don't," he said simply. "Set boundaries, not walls. Be clear about what you will and won't accept going forward." "When did you get so wise?" I teased, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Around the same time I lost everything and had to rebuild," he replied, his tone light but honest. "Hard lessons tend to stick." In the darkness of my bedroom, wrapped in the arms of this man who had appeared in my life at exactly the right moment, I felt something unfamiliar take root: hope. Not just for us, but for me, for a future where I valued myself as much as others, where my dreams mattered, where I wasn't defined by what I could give, but by who I chose to be. "I think I might be falling in love with you," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could reconsider. His arms tightened around me. "I think I might have fallen the moment you told me you'd canceled your sister's wedding with 3 taps." I laughed softly. "That's a strange thing to fall in love with." "Not really," he countered, his voice warm in the darkness. "I fell in love with your courage. With a woman who finally decided she mattered too." And in that moment, I believed him. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a strange new reality, one where I was both villain and hero in my own story, depending on who was telling it. Blake's mother called again, this time to inform me that they'd spoken with their family attorney about the fraudulent signatures on the venue contracts. "We're not pursuing legal action," she assured me. "But you should know that the venue has agreed to refund half of the deposit given the circumstances." "That's unexpected," I said, genuinely surprised. "The Harrington name carries some weight in the city," she replied simply. "And fraud is fraud, regardless of whether it's family." The refunded deposit, $12,000, appeared in my account 3 days later, a financial lifeline I hadn't expected. I immediately transferred it to my savings, the first step in rebuilding what Jordan had drained. My father called next, his approach different from my mother's emotional bombardment. "Your sister made mistakes," he acknowledged gruffly. "But family forgives, Avery." "I do forgive her," I replied truthfully. "But forgiveness doesn't mean funding her lifestyle or tolerating abuse." "Abuse is a strong word," he protested. "Is it?" "She left me bleeding, Dad. In public. After using my credit for months under false pretenses. What would you call it?" His silence spoke volumes. "I'm not cutting you all off," I continued, softer now. "But things have to change. I won't be Jordan's backup plan or emergency fund anymore. And if we need help, your mother and I aren't getting any younger. Real help for real needs? Of course I'll be there. But I'm done enabling Jordan's schemes." After we hung up, I felt a strange lightness. The conversation hadn't solved everything, but it was a start, my first attempt at setting boundaries without burning bridges. Nate and I fell into an easy rhythm together, spending most nights at my place, which was larger and quieter than his apartment above the coffee shop. He brought over his drawing supplies, setting up a small workspace in the corner of my living room. I cleared a drawer for his clothes, then another. Small steps towards something that felt increasingly permanent. "Move in with me," I said one evening, the words surprising us both. He looked up from his sketchbook, eyebrows raised. "Are you sure? It's only been 3 weeks." "I'm sure," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. I know it's fast, but nothing about us has been conventional from the start. His slow smile lit up his whole face. Avery, the bold strikes again. Is that a yes? He set aside his drawing and pulled me onto his lap. It's an absolutely yes. But let's do it right, find a new place together. Somewhere that's ours from the beginning. The apartment hunt became our weekend project, a welcome distraction from the ongoing family drama. We found a perfect loft in an old converted warehouse, exposed brick walls, massive windows, room for both my architectural drafting table and his art studio. The rent was slightly more than I'd been paying, but with Nate's income combined with mine, it was comfortably affordable. 1-year lease, the agent said, sliding the paperwork across the table. You can move in next month. I signed my name first, then handed the pen to Nate. Watching him at his signature beside mine felt momentous, a tangible symbol of this new life we were building together. Official, he said, grinning as he capped the pen. Terrifyingly so, I agreed, but I was smiling too. As we left the leasing office, my phone buzzed with a notification from my bank app. A deposit of $2,000 had been made to my account from J. Reynolds. Jordan, Nate asked, peering over my shoulder. I nodded, surprised. First installment, I guess. Over the next week, similar deposits appeared every few days. $1, $500, $3,000, $2,500, always from the same source, always without accompanying message or explanation. I broke my silence and texted her, "Thank you for the payments." Her response came hours later, "Whatever. Mom and Dad made me." I didn't reply. Some relationships couldn't be fixed with money, and some apologies never came. I was learning to be okay with that. The day that should have been Jordan's wedding dawned bright and clear. Instead of a ceremony, the Harrington family announced a substantial donation to a local education charity in what society columns delicately called a change of plans for the previously announced union. Jordan had moved back to our parents' house, refusing to leave her room according to family friends who still kept in touch with me. My mother's texts, now coming from new numbers I hadn't blocked, oscillated between rage and desperate pleas. She's devastated. Her life is ruined. How could you do this to your own sister? Then hours later, please, Avery, we need your help. Your father's retirement isn't enough. We can't support her alone. I didn't respond to either. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. 6 weeks after what Nate and I now called the salon incident, we signed the final paperwork for our new apartment, the one I delayed for Jordan's wedding. As we unpacked boxes in a space that was finally ours, my phone buzzed with a text from an unsaved number. It's Blake. I wanted to thank you, not for what happened with Jordan, that's still complicated, but for showing me the truth before I made a permanent mistake. I hope you're doing well. I showed the message to Nate, who nodded thoughtfully. Bullet dodged for that guy. For both of us, I corrected. Me financially, him matrimonially. Speaking of financial recovery, Nate nodded toward the coffee table, where a thick envelope lay among the moving chaos. The Westark Fellowship application, complete with my portfolio, ready to be mailed. I'd worked on it every evening for weeks, pouring my architectural vision and passion into the designs. Whether I won or not, completing the application felt like a victory, a declaration that my dreams mattered too. Want to do the honors? Nate asked, holding out the envelope. I sealed it with deliberate care, smoothing down the flap. It feels weird to be excited about something for myself. Get used to it, he said, pulling me into a hug. I have a feeling there's a lot more excitement coming your way. As we stood in our half-unpacked apartment, surrounded by boxes and potential and new beginnings, I realized he was right. The path forward wasn't clear or certain, but for the first time, it was truly mine. That evening, Nate and I stood on our small balcony overlooking the city park, watching families stroll below. The setting sun cast everything in a golden glow, turning ordinary scenes into moments of unexpected beauty. My sister had lost a fiancé, a wedding, and her carefully cultivated image. My parents had lost their favorite daughter's fairy tale ending. Jordan was left responsible for the remaining vendor balances she'd accrued, though I suspected our parents would eventually bail her out as they always had. And me? I'd gained something I hadn't fully realized was missing, my own life, reclaimed one canceled credit card at a time. And something unexpected, a partner who saw me clearly and loved what he saw. Nate's arms encircled me from behind, his lips finding the sensitive spot below my ear. "Penny for your thoughts?" I turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze. I was just thinking that sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't require grand gestures or elaborate schemes. Sometimes it's as simple as stopping the payments, stopping the sacrifice, stopping the pattern that keeps you small while making others feel big. And the consequences? His question was gentle, knowing. Those belong to them. I reached up to touch his face, marveling at how right this felt. But the rewards, those belong to us. His kiss was a promise, one I finally believed I deserved. 2 months after moving in together, I received a thick envelope from the Westark Fellowship. My hands trembled as I opened it, Nate hovering anxiously nearby. "Dear Ms. Reynolds," I read aloud, my voice shaking slightly. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist for this year's Westark International Architectural Fellowship." Nate whooped, lifting me off my feet in a spinning hug. "I knew it. I told you they'd recognize your talent." Being a finalist didn't guarantee the fellowship, but it meant interviews, further portfolio reviews, and a real chance at the opportunity I dreamed of but never pursued. Whether I ultimately won or not, the recognition validated something essential. My vision mattered. My relationship with my family remained complicated. Small steps toward reconciliation happened gradually, a birthday card from my father, an awkward coffee with my mother where neither of us mentioned Jordan, a Christmas dinner where the tension was palpable but not unbearable. Jordan herself remained distant, the wound between us too raw for easy healing. But time has a way of shifting perspectives, and 6 months after the salon incident, she texted me out of the blue. "Got a real job. Assistant manager at Nordstrom. Not as glamorous as luxury real estate, but the paycheck is steady." I responded simply, "Proud of you." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was acknowledgement of her effort, of the possibility of change. Baby steps toward whatever our relationship might become in this new reality where I was no longer her safety net. The final payment from Jordan arrived exactly 1 year after the canceled wedding, bringing her total repayment to just over $21,000, not the full amount, but close enough that I considered the debt cleared. The check came with a note in her handwriting, "I'm sorry." Not just for the money. I didn't respond immediately. Some apologies need to be felt rather than instantly absolved. But I tucked the note into my journal, a reminder that even the deepest patterns can change if we're brave enough to break them. In March, the full fellowship results arrived. I hadn't won the top prize, but I'd placed high enough to receive a 3-month study opportunity in Prague, a modified version of my dream, but a dream nonetheless. "You have to go," Nate insisted when I hesitated about leaving him for 3 months. "But we just got settled," I protested. "And what about your graphic novel deadline?" "I can draw anywhere," he pointed out. "My publisher won't care if I'm working from Prague instead of here." His eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "Come to think of it, a European Gothic city would be the perfect setting research for my next project. Are you inviting yourself along on my fellowship?" I asked, pretending to be scandalized. "Absolutely." He pulled me close. "Unless you'd rather have your European adventure solo." "Never," I said, meaning it completely. Some adventures are better shared. As we made plans, researched apartments in Prague, and dreamed of European streets and ancient architecture, I marveled at how thoroughly my life had transformed in a single year. From funding someone else's dream to pursuing my own. From being taken for granted to being truly seen. From settling for less to demanding more. All because I'd finally understood a simple truth. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Boundaries aren't walls meant to keep others out. They're definitions of where you end and others begin. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for those who take advantage of you is simply to stop enabling. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Your father, and I would like to take you and Nate to dinner before you leave for Prague. If you're available." Progress, small but significant. I typed back, "We'd like that." Looking up, I caught Nate watching me with a soft expression. "What?" I asked, self-conscious suddenly. "Just admiring Avery the Bold," he said, his smile warming me from the inside out. The woman who canceled a wedding and found herself in the process. I laughed, the sound free and genuine. "That should be the title of my memoir." "I'd read it," he said, pulling me into his arms. "In fact, I'd illustrate it." As the afternoon sun streamed through our loft windows, highlighting the architectural drawings spread across my desk and the comic panels on his, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. Not because everything was perfect, it wasn't. Not because all wounds were healed, some never would be completely. But because for the first time in my adult life, I was living authentically, loving openly, and standing firmly in my own worth. Sometimes the most romantic story isn't about finding someone to complete you, but finding the courage to complete yourself and then finding someone who loves the whole of who you are. And sometimes the most powerful act isn't a grand gesture of defiance, but the quiet dignity of saying, "No more." 3 taps on a phone, a canceled credit card, a moment of standing in your truth, even when your cheek is stinging and everyone is watching. Small actions that change everything. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates, if you've ever given too much, sacrificed your dreams for someone who wouldn't do the same for you, or struggled to set boundaries with family, I want you to know something important. You matter. Your dreams matter. Your financial security matters. And it's never too late to reclaim your power. Like this video if it spoke to you. Subscribe for more stories of courage and transformation. And leave a comment sharing one boundary you're going to set this week. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's essential. Until next time, this is Pure Revenge Stories, reminding you that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well. Go find another table. This one's for family, not adopted girls. The words cut through the elegant restaurant like a knife. I froze, my face burning with humiliation as other diners turned to stare. "Victoria, that's enough," I said quietly. My mother laughed. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. We're just teasing." 2 hours later, the waiter placed a leather folder in front of me. I opened it and nearly collapsed. $3,270. "Oh, didn't we mention you're paying tonight?" Victoria smirked. "Consider it your contribution to the family since you're always taking and never giving. What happened next would change all our lives forever." Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another true story on the channel. To all my subscribers, thank you for being here. You're the reason I keep sharing these stories of triumph over adversity. Before we begin today, I want to say a quick prayer for you. May your path be clear of obstacles. May you find strength when you need it most. And may you always recognize your own worth even when others fail to see it. May abundance flow into your life, and may you find peace in your heart today and always. Now, let's get into this incredible story of revenge and justice. Growing up in the Hayes family mansion, I learned early that there was a clear hierarchy, and I was at the bottom. While my adoptive parents, Patricia and Gregory, smiled for photos and told everyone about their charitable act of saving me behind closed doors, the reality was starkly different. Victoria, my adoptive sister, was 5 years older and never let me forget that I wasn't a real Hayes. She got the best bedroom in the house, with a view of the garden and an ensuite bathroom. I got the smallest room at the end of the hall, next to the linen closet. When guests came over, my parents proudly showed off Victoria's room, but always seemed to skip mine. "Rachel's room is nothing special," Patricia would say with a dismissive wave if anyone asked. "Just a basic bedroom. Nothing worth seeing." Even simple things like clothes revealed the disparity. Victoria received designer outfits for every season, while I wore her hand-me-downs until they were threadbare. When I grew too tall for Victoria's old clothes, Patricia would reluctantly take me shopping at discount stores, sighing dramatically at the checkout counter. We have to be practical with Rachel. She'd tell the cashier, loud enough for me to hear. She's not as careful with nice things as our Victoria. One Christmas morning when I was 12, I watched Victoria unwrap the latest iPhone, while Kenneth received an expensive gaming system. I smiled politely when I opened my gift, a packet of socks and a math workbook. "Is this all?" I asked, immediately regretting the words. Gregory's face hardened. "Most adopted children have nothing, Rachel. You should be grateful for anything you get." "I'm sorry," I whispered, fighting back tears. "Thank you for the gifts." Victoria smirked. "Maybe next year, you can get your own presents if you save your allowance." "Victoria gets an allowance?" I asked, confused. I'd never received one. Patricia laughed nervously as a family friend glanced up with concern. "Rachel has such a vivid imagination," she said. "We treat our children exactly the same." But we all knew it wasn't true. College applications made the disparity even clearer. Victoria attended an elite private school, while I was sent to the local public school. "We've set aside college funds for our children," Patricia explained when I asked about my options. "You'll need to apply for scholarships and loans." It builds character. Through it all, only one person in the family treated me with genuine kindness: Grandma Dorothy, Patricia's mother. A self-made pharmaceutical entrepreneur, Dorothy had built her empire from nothing, amassing a fortune that dwarfed even her daughter's considerable wealth. Why do they treat me differently? I asked her one day when I was 15, sitting in her garden during one of our regular visits. Grandma Dorothy sighed, her eyes sad but kind. "Some people, Rachel, measure their worth by making others feel worthless. Your achievements threaten them because they haven't earned their own success." "But they're my family," I said, my voice breaking. She took my hands in hers. "Family isn't just blood, dear. Family is how you treat each other. And sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're given." "Did you choose me?" I asked quietly. Her eyes crinkled as she smiled. "Every single day, my darling. And I couldn't be prouder of the woman you're becoming." I took her words to heart. While my adoptive family belittled my dreams, I channeled my hurt into determination. I built my design skills through online tutorials, took extra classes when I could afford them, and slowly built a portfolio. By the time I was 24, I had launched my own graphic design business. 3 years later, my business was beginning to thrive. I had secured several regular clients and had just landed a major contract worth $50,000, the biggest achievement of my career so far. "That's wonderful news, Rachel," Grandma Dorothy exclaimed when I called her with the news. "Thanks, Grandma. I'm still in shock, honestly." "Will you tell your parents?" she asked carefully. I hesitated. "I'll try. They never seem interested in my work." "Well, I'm interested," she said firmly. "In fact, I think we should celebrate. There's a family dinner for Victoria's new business venture this Friday at Belmont's. I'd love it if you came." "I don't know, Grandma. Those dinners never end well for me." "Please." Her voice was soft but insistent. "It would mean a lot to me to have you there." Unable to refuse her, I agreed. I had no idea that this dinner would change everything. Belmont's was Seattle's most prestigious restaurant, where reservations were booked months in advance, and even the water was imported from some exclusive European spring. I'd spent hours getting ready, selecting my most professional outfit, a sleek black dress I'd purchased with my first major client payment, and a pair of simple pearl earrings Grandma Dorothy had given me for my 21st birthday. I arrived exactly on time, smoothing my dress nervously before entering the restaurant. The maitre d' led me to the family table where everyone was already seated, Patricia and Gregory at one end, Victoria and her husband on one side, Kenneth on the other, and Grandma Dorothy at the far end, watching everyone with an unreadable expression. As I approached, Victoria looked up, her perfectly lined lips curving into what might have appeared to strangers as a smile, but what I recognized as a smirk. "Go find another table," she announced loudly enough for nearby diners to hear. "This one's for family, not adopted girls." Laughter erupted around the table. Patricia's tinkling social laugh, Gregory's deep chuckle, Kenneth's snort, and Victoria's husband's obedient guffaw, a chorus of cruelty that silenced the surrounding conversations as other diners turned to stare. I stood frozen, clutching my small handbag, my face burning with humiliation as the chandelier light suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. "Victoria, that's enough," I said quietly, struggling to maintain my dignity. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," Patricia waved her hand dismissively, diamond bracelet catching the light. "We're just teasing. You know how Victoria is." I did know how Victoria was. I knew exactly how all of them were, but something in me had shifted. Perhaps it was the success I'd begun to taste in my professional life, or perhaps it was simply that I'd reached my limit after 2 decades of emotional abuse. "Sit down, Rachel," Gregory ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You're making a scene." I sat, swallowing the protest rising in my throat. I was seated at the edge of the table, half my chair jutting into the walkway where servers had to navigate around me. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Even here, I was an inconvenience, an afterthought. The evening proceeded as these family dinners always did. Victoria dominated the conversation with details of her investment, a property development that my parents had helped finance to the tune of several $100,000. "The projected return is incredible," Victoria gushed. "Daddy, your investment is going to double within 2 years." "That's my girl," Gregory beamed. Always the business mind. Kenneth jumped in, eager for attention. "Speaking of business success, my department exceeded targets by 30% this quarter." "Well done, son." Gregory raised his wine glass. "To Kenneth's continued success at the firm. And to Victoria's brilliant investment," Patricia added. "Our children make us so proud." I sat silently, picking at my salad, invisible as always. After a moment, I cleared my throat. "I actually have some good news too," I said hesitantly. "I landed a major client this week. A national campaign worth $50,000. "That's nice, dear." Patricia cut me off mid-sentence. "Kenneth, tell us more about your bonus." By the time dessert arrived, I'd retreated into myself, the familiar numbness settling over me like an old coat. I picked at my creme brulee, wondering why I still subjected myself to these gatherings, why some part of me still hoped for acceptance that clearly would never come. Then the waiter approached with the check, and my stomach dropped as he placed the leather folder directly in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What's this?" I asked. Victoria's laugh was sharp and bright. "Oh, didn't we mention you're paying tonight? Consider it your contribution to the family since you're always taking and never giving." "Taking?" The word came out strangled. "I've never asked you for anything." The roof over your head growing up, the food, the clothes. Patricia ticked off items on her fingers, the same hand that wore a ring worth more than my monthly rent. "We give you everything, Rachel. The least you can do is buy us dinner." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The total made my vision blur, $3,270. They'd ordered the most expensive wines, multiple appetizers, premium steaks, and lobster tails. Kenneth had even ordered 3 desserts simply because he could. "I can't afford this," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "Of course you can," Victoria said sweetly. "You just told us about your big client. $50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now." The truth was that the $50,000 was spread over 6 months of work, and most of it was already allocated to business expenses, rent, and paying off the student loans my family had refused to help with. This single dinner would wipe out my emergency savings. But I couldn't make another scene. With shaking hands, I pulled out my credit card and placed it in the folder. The waiter whisked it away, and I forced myself to smile, to sip my water, to pretend this wasn't devastating me. Victoria was already talking about their upcoming vacation to Tuscany. My parents were planning to join them. Nobody asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the waiter returned with my card and receipt, I signed with numb fingers. $3,270 for the privilege of being humiliated by people who were supposed to love me. Well, that was lovely, Patricia said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. Same time next month? Next month. They expected this to become a regular thing. I opened my mouth to protest, to finally say enough was enough, when a voice cut through the chatter. Just a moment, please. Everyone fell silent. Grandma Dorothy, who had been quiet all evening, was standing at her end of the table. At 78, she still commanded attention, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture straight as a rod. Something in her expression made my chest tighten. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. "Mother, what is it?" Patricia asked, irritation creeping into her voice. We were just about to leave. "Sit down, all of you." Grandma Dorothy's voice carried an authority that made even my father straighten in his chair. "I have something to say, and you're going to listen." Victoria rolled her eyes, but stayed seated. Kenneth checked his phone under the table. My parents exchanged confused glances. Grandma Dorothy's gaze swept across each of them before landing on me. Something flickered in her eyes, sadness maybe, or disappointment in everyone else. "I've been watching this family for years," she began, her voice steady but cold. "Watching how you treat Rachel, how you've always treated her." "Mother, really?" Patricia protested. "This isn't the time." "Be quiet." The command was so sharp that my mother actually obeyed. "I'm 78 years old, and I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy, about where my money should go when I'm gone." The table went very still. My father's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down. Victoria's smug expression faltered. "We all know how this works," Grandma Dorothy continued. "The bulk of my estate goes to Patricia, then distributed among the grandchildren." That's what the current will says. I watched Victoria's face light up with greed. She'd been counting on that inheritance for years, planning elaborate purchases, making investments based on money she didn't even have yet. "But I've had my lawyer draw up a new will." Grandma Dorothy pulled an envelope from her purse. "Signed and notarized yesterday." The silence was suffocating. You could have heard a pin drop in the restaurant. "You can't be serious," Kenneth said. "You're changing your will? Because of what?" "A stupid joke." "A joke?" Grandma Dorothy's laugh was bitter. "I've watched you all mock and belittle Rachel for over 2 decades. I've watched you exclude her, humiliate her, treat her like she's less than human, and tonight you made her pay for your excess while you laughed about it." "We were just having fun," Victoria protested, but her voice wavered. "Fun." Grandma Dorothy repeated the word like it tasted foul. "You think cruelty is fun? You think making someone feel worthless is entertainment?" My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Grandma Dorothy walked slowly around the table until she stood beside me. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder. "Rachel is the only one in this family who's shown true character," she said. "She's worked for everything she has. Built a business from nothing with no help from any of you. She's kind, talented, and resilient despite your best efforts to break her spirit." "Mother, you're being dramatic," Gregory said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Grandma Dorothy's eyebrows rose. "Patricia, when was the last time you asked Rachel about her life?" "Really?" Asked and actually listened to the answer. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Kenneth, have you ever congratulated your sister on her accomplishments? Ever acknowledged her success?" My brother stared at his plate. "Victoria, have you spent even one day treating Rachel like family instead of a servant?" My sister's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "So, here's what's going to happen," Grandma Dorothy said, her voice gaining strength. "My entire estate, every dollar, every property, every investment is going to Rachel." The explosion was immediate. "What?" Victoria shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You can't do that. That's not fair." Kenneth slammed his hand on the table. "Grandmother, think about what you're saying. Rachel isn't even really family," Patricia pleaded. "You're talking about billions of dollars." "Stop." Grandma Dorothy's command silenced them again. "Rachel is more family than any of you have ever been. She's earned this not through blood, but through character. Through being a better person than all of you combined. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Billions of dollars. Grandma Dorothy's entire fortune. It was impossible, unreal, too enormous to comprehend. "You're being manipulated," Gregory said desperately. "Rachel must have done something." "Rachel has done nothing but survive your abuse." Grandma Dorothy cut him off, and that ends tonight. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Thomas, it's Dorothy." "Yes." "File the new will immediately. Make sure it's ironclad and prepare the trust documents for Rachel." My family's faces ranged from shock to fury to disbelief. Victoria looked like she might actually faint. Kenneth's face had gone purple. My parents seemed to age a decade in seconds. "This isn't over," Victoria hissed at me. "We'll contest it. We'll fight you in court." "Try it," Grandma Dorothy said calmly. "I've made sure everything is completely legal, and I'm of sound mind, as a medical evaluation from this morning confirms." Victoria lunged across the table, her face contorted with rage. Kenneth grabbed her arm, but his own anger was barely contained. My parents sat in stunned silence, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. "You manipulative little," Victoria snarled at me. "You planned this. You've been playing the victim this whole time." "Enough." Grandma Dorothy stepped between us. "Rachel has done nothing wrong. She didn't even know about this until now." It was true. I was still reeling, my mind unable to grasp what had just happened. "Why are you doing this?" Patricia's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your daughter, your blood. And you should be ashamed of how you've acted," Grandma Dorothy replied, her voice softer but still firm. "I gave you every advantage in life, Patricia. Education, opportunities, love, and you took all of that and learned nothing about compassion or kindness." The morning after the restaurant confrontation, I woke in one of Grandma Dorothy's guest rooms to find my phone exploding with notifications. 43 missed calls from Victoria, 27 from Patricia, 16 from Kenneth, and dozens of text messages ranging from pleading to threatening. "You're being selfish. Think about the family." "Patricia, I'll destroy you in court." "You won't see a penny." "Victoria, we need to talk. This can still be fixed." "Gregory, grandmother's clearly not thinking straight. Help us get her evaluated." "Kenneth." I silenced my phone and made my way to Grandma Dorothy's study where Walter, her attorney, was waiting with a leather portfolio and a grave expression. "Rachel," Grandma Dorothy said as I entered, "there's something you need to know about your adoption." Walter opened his portfolio and began explaining a shocking truth. When my birth parents died in the car accident that left me orphaned at 5 years old, they'd left behind a trust fund of $750,000 specifically for my care. "Patricia and Gregory received this money when they adopted you," Walter explained, showing me bank statements and transfer records. "It was meant to cover your education, healthcare, clothing, everything a growing child would need." My hands trembled as I flipped through the papers. "They spent it all," I whispered, seeing the account statements. Vacations, cars, Victoria's private school tuition, Kenneth's college fund. "They spent my money on everyone but me." "Yes," Grandma Dorothy said quietly. "I only discovered this myself 2 years ago. I've been investigating since then, gathering evidence. The betrayal cut deeper than anything. It wasn't just cruelty or favoritism. They'd profited from my loss, taken money meant for my care, and used it to spoil their biological children while treating me like a burden." Walter has already filed a civil suit against Patricia and Gregory for misappropriation of trust funds, Grandma Dorothy explained. "With interest over 22 years, they owe you approximately $2.3 million. Just then, my phone rang. Gregory calling. Grandma Dorothy nodded. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." "Rachel." Gregory's voice was desperate. "Rachel, please, we need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly." "She seems perfectly clear to me," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is insane. You can't possibly think you deserve her entire fortune. You've been with us for 22 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved." "The moment money is involved," I repeated. You mean like the $750,000 you took for adopting me? The money you spent on everyone except me? Silence. Then, I don't know what lies she's been telling you. Bank records don't lie, Dad. Walter has all the documentation. You stole from me. You both did. Patricia's voice came through the phone, shrill with panic. That money was for raising you, for housing you, feeding you. You gave me hand-me-downs and made me pay my own way through college, I interrupted. Meanwhile, Victoria got designer clothes and a full ride to a private university. Kenneth got a new car at 16. I got nothing. We'll fight this, Patricia threatened. We'll take you to court. Please do, Grandma Dorothy cut in. I'd love to see you explain the financial records to a judge. 3 days later, the story hit the media. Billionaire disinherits family for adopted granddaughter, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters wanting statements. The public reaction was divided. Some praised Grandma Dorothy for rewarding character over blood. Others called me a manipulative gold digger who'd seduced an elderly woman for her fortune. She must have been sleeping with the old woman's lawyer. Gold digger alert. This girl knew exactly what she was doing. Good for Dorothy. Family isn't blood. It's how you treat people. Victoria's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at my old apartment building, screaming at tenants. She posted long, rambling rants on social media, claiming I'd used witchcraft to manipulate Grandma Dorothy, that I was part of a conspiracy. Then came the press conference. Grandma Dorothy, looking frail but determined, sat beside me at a long table as cameras flashed. She methodically laid out the evidence, the documentation of abuse, the stolen trust fund money, years of emotional and financial manipulation. Some have suggested Rachel manipulated me, Grandma Dorothy said, her gaze sweeping the room. The truth is the opposite. My biological family manipulated her. They took a grieving 5-year-old child and used her as a punching bag for their own inadequacies. When it was my turn to speak, I simply told the truth about growing up as an unwanted child in a family that resented my existence. I explained that I hadn't known about the inheritance until that night at the restaurant. As we were wrapping up, Victoria burst through the doors, her makeup smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. This is all lies. She's brainwashed you all. The cameras swiveled to her, capturing every second of her meltdown. I'm the real victim here. That adopted brat has stolen my inheritance. Ms. Victoria, a reporter called out. What about the allegations that your parents stole trust fund money meant for Rachel? That money was ours. We earned it by raising her ungrateful self. The cameras caught everything, her admission, her rage, her complete lack of remorse. As Victoria was escorted out, still screaming threats, the narrative shifted. Victoria had given the media the villain they needed, and it wasn't me. Her viral meltdown destroyed any credibility my family might have had. Social media exploded with commentary supporting me and condemning them. Legal experts weighed in, all agreeing that Victoria's admission had essentially torpedoed any chance of contesting the will. Their legal case just collapsed, Walter told me afterward. Victoria's admission that they earned the trust fund money by raising you is essentially a confession to misappropriation of funds. The district attorney's office reached out, considering fraud charges against Patricia and Gregory. My peaceful life had turned into a media storm, but through it all, Grandma Dorothy remained my anchor, guiding me with wisdom and strength even as her health rapidly declined. The court hearing arrived on a gray Seattle morning. The courthouse was surrounded by media, protesters holding signs both for and against me, curiosity seekers hoping for a glimpse of the drama. Grandma Dorothy looked frail in her wheelchair. We'd finally convinced her to use one, but her spine was still straight. I held her hand as we entered the courtroom. My family was already there. Patricia, Gregory, Kenneth, and Victoria sat at the defendant's table with their team of lawyers. Patricia had maintained the soft, sympathetic appearance from a recent interview where she'd portrayed herself as a loving mother wronged by an ungrateful adopted daughter. Gregory looked tired and defeated. Kenneth wouldn't meet my eyes. But Victoria, Victoria stared at me with pure hatred. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s, entered and everyone rose. This is a hearing regarding the will of Dorothy Hayes and the contest filed by Patricia Hayes and family, Judge Morrison began. I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Counsel, your opening statements. The family's lawyer went first, arguing that Grandma Dorothy had been unduly influenced, that her illness had impaired her judgment, that the will should be set aside in favor of the previous version. Then Walter stood. He didn't argue or plead. He simply presented facts. Bank records showing the stolen trust fund money. Medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors confirming Grandma Dorothy's sound mind. Documentation of the abuse I'd suffered. Photos, recordings, witness statements. And finally, Victoria's viral video confession. Your Honor, Walter concluded, this is not a case of undue influence. This is a case of a woman choosing to leave her estate to someone who deserves it and a family angry that their victim has finally escaped their control. Patricia's lawyer tried to counter, but Judge Morrison cut him off. I've seen enough, she said. The evidence is overwhelming. Miss Dorothy Hayes was clearly of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documentation of abuse is extensive and credible, and the admission by Victoria Hayes that the family earned money meant for Rachel's care essentially confirms the allegations of financial exploitation. My heart began to race. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, the behavior exhibited by the contesting parties during these proceedings, including threats, harassment, and public defamation, only reinforces that Miss Dorothy's decision was correct. A family that truly loved Rachel would never have treated her this way before or after the will change. Victoria stood up, unable to contain herself. This is... Sit down, Judge Morrison commanded, or I'll hold you in contempt. Victoria sat, but her fury was palpable. I'm ruling in favor of the will as executed, Judge Morrison declared. The contest is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Patricia and Gregory Hayes to pay restitution for the misappropriated trust funds, $750,000 plus interest over 22 years, totaling approximately $2.3 million. They have 90 days to pay in full. The courtroom erupted. Patricia collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Gregory looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Kenneth put his head in his hands. Victoria started screaming until bailiffs escorted her out. I sat frozen, unable to process that it was over. We'd won, completely, decisively, irrevocably. Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand. It's done, sweetheart. You're free. As we left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. How did I feel? What would I do with the money? Did I have a message for my family? But I didn't answer. I just helped Grandma Dorothy into the car and let Thomas drive us away. Back at the estate, Grandma Dorothy was exhausted but satisfied. I can rest now, she said, and the words hit me like a physical blow. Please don't talk like that, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. Oh, Rachel. She cupped my face with her thin hands. I'm not afraid. I got to see justice done. I got to know my fortune will be used for good. That's more than most people get. That evening, as we sat watching the sunset over Lake Washington, Grandma Dorothy shared her vision for her legacy. I want you to establish a foundation, she said. For children like you, adopted kids who are being mistreated or exploited. Give them the support and protection I should have given you from the beginning. I will, I promised. I'll make you proud. You already have. Her smile was peaceful. You survived them, Rachel. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You worked hard when they tried to break you. You're everything I hoped you'd be. In that moment, with the fading light glinting off the water and Grandma Dorothy's hand in mine, I realized that what I'd gained wasn't just money or justice. It was the knowledge that I had been worthy of love all along. That someone had seen me for who I truly was. And that, more than any inheritance, was the gift I would cherish forever. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Grandma Dorothy fade. She slipped in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, telling her about my plans for the foundation. I wanted to start something to help adopted children who were being abused or exploited. "That's perfect," she murmured during one of her clearer moments. "Help others like you break the cycle." She died on a Tuesday morning with me holding her hand and the sun streaming through the window. Her last words were, "Thank you for being my real family." I stayed with her for a long time after, crying for the woman who'd saved me, who'd loved me, who'd given me a future, the only grandmother I'd ever really had. The funeral was private, just me, Thomas, Walter, and a few of Grandma Dorothy's close friends. Patricia tried to crash it and was turned away by security, causing yet another scene that made the local news. In the weeks that followed, the full transfer of assets was completed. I was now the sole heir to an $8 billion fortune. The number was still incomprehensible, but I was determined to honor Grandma Dorothy's legacy. "What will you do first?" Thomas asked me one morning as we had breakfast overlooking Lake Washington. He had stayed on, loyal to Grandma Dorothy's memory and now to me. "Exactly what I promised her," I replied. "Start the foundation." The Dorothy Hayes Foundation for Adopted Children was established within a month of her death. We rented office space in downtown Seattle and hired a small, dedicated team of social workers, counselors, and legal experts. Our mission was clear: identify adopted children in abusive or exploitative situations and provide immediate intervention and long-term support. "We need to focus on financial abuse too," I told Walter during one of our planning meetings. "So many adoptive parents don't understand that the money they receive is for the child, not for them. Or they understand perfectly and do it anyway," Walter said grimly. "Exactly. We need to create oversight systems, education programs, and legal resources." The foundation grew rapidly, expanding to 3 cities within its first year. We partnered with social service agencies, family courts, and adoption organizations. We created a hotline for adopted children to call if they were being mistreated. We funded scholarships for college, vocational training, and therapy. Meanwhile, my family's downfall continued. Unable to pay the $2.3 million in restitution, Patricia and Gregory were forced to sell their house, their cars, everything of value. They moved into a small apartment in a rough neighborhood, ironic considering they'd always looked down on people they deemed beneath them. Gregory faced fraud charges for the trust fund theft and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Patricia received 2 years. Their reputation in Seattle society was destroyed. Former friends distanced themselves, country club memberships were revoked, board positions lost. Kenneth, who'd benefited from the stolen money through his education, was required to pay back his portion, approximately $400,000. His marriage collapsed under the financial strain, and he was forced to take a job far below his previous position, working 2 shifts to make the payments. Victoria's fate was perhaps the most dramatic. Her viral meltdown had become a cautionary tale. Her husband divorced her, taking their house and most of their assets in the settlement. She'd invested heavily in a restaurant venture that failed spectacularly, leaving her deep in debt. The private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me was now suing her for unpaid fees. 6 months after Grandma Dorothy's death, I received an email from Victoria. "Rachel, I know we had our differences, but we're still sisters. Family forgives family. I'm struggling right now, and I know you're doing well. Maybe we could meet for coffee, talk about the past, and build a future together." I stared at the screen, almost laughing at the audacity. After everything she'd done, all the cruelty, all the public attacks, she now wanted to build a future together, which I knew meant she wanted access to my money. I deleted the email without responding. 1 year after inheriting Grandma Dorothy's fortune, I was featured in a business magazine, not as the adopted girl who inherited billions, but as a CEO running multiple successful companies and a growing foundation that had helped over 500 children. The article focused on my work, my vision, my accomplishments. There was only a small mention of the family drama that had thrust me into the spotlight. The reporter asked if I felt satisfaction in my former family's downfall. Justice and revenge aren't the same thing, I replied carefully. What happened to them was justice, the natural consequence of their actions over many years. But my focus isn't on their downfall. It's on building something meaningful from what Grandma Dorothy entrusted to me. And the companies? The pharmaceutical empire? How are you handling that transition? I smiled. Learning every day. I have excellent mentors and advisors. But most importantly, I understand what these companies meant to my grandmother. Not just profit centers, but vehicles for innovation and positive change. That's the legacy I'm focused on continuing. As the foundation grew, so did my confidence. I expanded Grandma Dorothy's pharmaceutical research, prioritizing treatments for rare childhood diseases. I established scholarship programs at universities across the country specifically for adopted students. I bought and renovated apartment buildings to provide transitional housing for young adults aging out of the foster care system. 2 years after Grandma Dorothy's death, I received a letter from prison. It was from Patricia. Rachel, it began, I write this with a humble heart. My time here has given me perspective on the harm I caused you. There is no excuse for how we treated you. I am deeply sorry and ask for your forgiveness. The letter continued with expressions of regret and claims of personal growth. It ended with a request to visit her in prison. I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. Perhaps one day I would respond. Perhaps not. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Forgiveness might come eventually, but it couldn't be rushed or demanded. That evening, I stood on the balcony of what was now my home, looking out over Seattle. The city lights sparkled below, and in the distance, I could see the illuminated sign of the Dorothy Hayes Foundation headquarters. We're making a difference, I said softly, as if Grandma Dorothy could hear me. Just like you wanted. In my hand, I held a letter that had arrived that morning, a thank you note from a 12-year-old girl named Mia who had been rescued from an abusive adoptive home through the Foundation's intervention. She was now living with a loving family, attending therapy, and planning to go to college someday. You saved my life, she'd written. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. It was in moments like these that I understood the true value of what Grandma Dorothy had given me, not the billions of dollars, but the power to break the cycle of pain for others. To ensure that children like Mia, like me, weren't alone in their suffering. That was the real inheritance. That was the true revenge against cruelty, creating kindness in its place. 5 years after that fateful dinner at Belmont's, I stood at the podium of a grand hall, addressing the attendees of the Dorothy Hayes Foundation's annual gala. The foundation had grown beyond anything I could have imagined, with offices in 12 cities across the country and partnerships with international adoption agencies. When my grandmother changed her will that night, I told the crowd, she wasn't just transferring wealth. She was entrusting me with a vision, a world where no adopted child feels unwanted, where every child receives the love and support they deserve. In the audience sat hundreds of supporters, donors, and most importantly, children and families who had been helped by our work. Among them was Mia, now 17 and thriving, planning to study psychology in college so she could help other trauma survivors. Tonight, I'm proud to announce the launch of our newest initiative, the Dorothy Hayes Legal Advocacy Program, which will provide free legal representation to adopted children facing abuse and work to reform adoption laws to prevent financial exploitation. The applause was thunderous. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I thought about how much had changed since that night when Victoria had told me to find another table because this one was for family. I had found another table, a much bigger one, and filled it with people who understood that family wasn't about blood or legal documents, but about love, respect, and genuine care. My biological family story had continued along its path of decline. Gregory had been released from prison after serving his full sentence, emerging as an old man, his health broken by the experience. Patricia, also released, had moved to a small town in Idaho, living in relative obscurity. Kenneth had managed to rebuild some semblance of a life, working a modest job and staying out of the spotlight. Victoria, however, had never recovered. Her attempts to launch a tell-all book about me had failed when publishers realized her story was full of provable lies. She'd tried to reinvent herself as a social media personality, but the internet never forgot her viral meltdown. Last I heard, she was working as a sales clerk in a department store, her dreams of wealth and status permanently shattered. I had not spoken to any of them in years. There had been attempts at reconciliation, especially from Patricia, whose prison letters had continued for a time. But some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt, not when the foundation was rotten from the start. After the gala, I returned to Grandma Dorothy's estate, my home now, though I'd redecorated parts of it while preserving her study exactly as she'd left it. I often sat in her chair, feeling close to her as I made decisions about the companies and foundation. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of her desk, where I kept the most precious reminders of our relationship, the pearl earrings she'd given me for my 21st birthday, the letters she'd written me when I was in college, and photographs of us together over the years. Among these treasures was a sealed envelope I'd never opened, marked for Rachel, when you're ready. Grandma Dorothy had given it to me just days before she died, telling me to open it when I felt the time was right. 5 years had passed. Perhaps I was finally ready. I broke the seal and unfolded a single page written in her elegant handwriting. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, I've been gone for some time, and you've taken up the mantle I passed to you. I hope you've found joy in the journey, despite the pain that preceded it. There's something I want you to understand about why I made you my heir. Yes, you deserved justice after years of mistreatment. Yes, you had the character and intelligence to handle the responsibility. But there was something more. I saw in you what I once saw in myself, a fighter who refused to let cruelty make her cruel, who maintained compassion despite receiving none, who built rather than destroyed. The greatest revenge against those who hurt us isn't to hurt them in return. It's to live well, to thrive, to create beauty from the ashes they left behind. It's to break the cycle rather than perpetuate it. I believe you understand this, which is why you were always the right choice. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched, in kindness shared, in the legacy of love you leave behind. By that measure, you are the richest person I knew long before you inherited a penny from me. With all my love and pride, Dorothy. Tears streamed down my face as I carefully refold the letter. She had always known, that the money itself wasn't the gift. It was the platform, the opportunity to create change, to help others, to build something meaningful from the ruins of a painful past. In the years since that dinner at Belmont's, I had moved from victim to survivor to creator. The $3,270 bill that my family had forced me to pay had been transformed into millions of dollars in support for vulnerable children. The cruelty they had shown me had been alchemized into compassion for others facing similar treatment. That was the true power of what Grandma Dorothy had given me, not revenge, but redemption. Not just for myself, but for every child who would never have to endure what I did because of the work we were doing. As I placed the letter back among my treasures, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The wounds of the past would always be part of my story, but they no longer define me. What defined me now were the choices I'd made since that night, to heal, to help, to build, to love. That was the ultimate victory. That was the most perfect revenge, living well and helping others do the same. In the quiet of Grandma Dorothy's study, my study now, I raised an invisible glass in a silent toast. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered, for showing me that family isn't who raised you, it's who loves you. And for teaching me that the best response to cruelty isn't more cruelty, it's creating kindness in a world that desperately needs it. Outside my window, Seattle glittered under the night sky, and somewhere in that city, children were sleeping safely tonight because of what we had built together. Children who, like me, had once felt unwanted but now knew they mattered. Children who would grow up to break cycles rather than repeat them. That was Grandma Dorothy's true legacy. And now it was mine too. If you've enjoyed this story of justice and transformation, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of resilience and redemption. Your support helps us continue sharing these important narratives. Leave a comment below about a time when you turned pain into purpose. I read every comment and would love to hear your stories too. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by the kindness you choose to create in the world. What the hell did you do? Brooke demanded, slamming the door of my classroom. I looked up calmly from the art project I was preparing. Good morning to you too, Brooke. Shouldn't you be on your honeymoon? Nathan's gone. He left a note saying he's filing for an annulment and has evidence of criminal activity. He mentioned you by name. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. What did you tell him? The truth, I said simply. Something you've never been particularly fond of. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Pure Revenge Stories. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who have subscribed to this channel. Before we dive into today's story, I want to say a quick prayer for all of you. May you find strength in your darkest moments, clarity when facing difficult choices, and the courage to stand in your truth even when it's easier to stay silent. May your kindness be returned tenfold, and may you always remember your worth is not determined by others' opinions of you. Amen. Now, let's get into this story about a sister's betrayal, a shocking revelation, and the dress that changed everything. I stood in the corner of the reception hall, nursing a glass of champagne that I couldn't afford. The crystal flute felt foreign in my hands, much like I felt in this room full of people celebrating my sister Brooke's wedding. My navy blue dress from Target had seemed perfectly fine in my apartment mirror this morning, but now, surrounded by designer gowns and custom suits, it screamed budget from every polyester thread. The grand ballroom of the Westfield Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. White roses and peonies cascaded from towering centerpieces on each table, and champagne flowed freely from a fountain near the dessert station. It was exactly the kind of extravagant display I'd come to expect from Brooke, beautiful, excessive, and designed to impress. I'd barely spoken to anyone since arriving an hour ago. Most of the guests were either Brooke's sorority sisters or Dad's business associates, people who knew me only as Brooke's little sister, if they knew me at all. I'd hoped my father might seek me out, but he was too busy playing proud patriarch, accepting congratulations for the daughter who had followed in his footsteps to become a successful investment banker. Did you seriously wear a $39.99 dress to my wedding? Brooke's voice cut through the ambient chatter as she approached, her white Vera Wang gown rustling expensively. God, Maddie, you couldn't splurge just this once? It's literally the most important day of my life. My cheeks burned as nearby guests pretended not to listen. I thought it looked nice, I defended weakly, tugging at the hem that suddenly felt too short. Brooke rolled her eyes dramatically, ensuring our audience could appreciate her dismay. This is so typical. Always trying to make yourself the center of attention with your poor teacher routine. Would it kill you to make an effort for once? I am making an effort, I hissed, trying to keep my voice down. This dress cost my entire entertainment budget for the month. Tragic, Brooke laughed, turning to her bridesmaids who had clustered around us. Maddie thinks she deserves a medal for spending $40 on a dress from the clearance rack. The women tittered as if on cue, their matching rose gold dresses shimmering under the ballroom lights. I recognized several of them from high school. The same girls who had laughed when Brooke accidentally spilled punch on my prom dress. Some things never changed. Don't worry, Brooke stage whispered to them, loud enough for me to hear. I made sure the photographer knows not to include her in the family portraits. Those are for the wedding album, not a Target catalog. The laughter grew louder. I downed my champagne in one gulp, fighting back tears. This was supposed to be different. We were adults now. I was 29, Brooke was 31. We'd survived our parents' messy divorce, our mother's death from cancer 3 years ago, our father's remarriage to a woman barely older than us. Somewhere in all that chaos, I'd foolishly hoped we might find a way to be actual sisters. You know what, Brooke? Congratulations on your special day. I set down my empty glass. I hope your marriage lasts longer than the time you spent considering my feelings. I turned to leave, but Brooke grabbed my wrist. Don't you dare make a scene, she hissed, her perfect smile still in place for any watching guests. Dad's already upset you didn't contribute to the wedding. The least you could do is pretend to be happy for me. Contribute. I pulled my arm away. You mean the $50,000 wedding that Dad paid for entirely? The wedding with a dress that costs more than my car? That wedding. It's not my fault you chose to be a kindergarten teacher, she snapped. Some of us have ambition. That stung. I'd wanted to teach since we were children, when I would help Brooke with her homework despite being 2 years younger. Teaching wasn't just a job to me, it was a calling. One that Brooke had belittled consistently since I graduated with my education degree. Ambition isn't measured by the price tag on your clothes, Brooke. I straightened my shoulders. Enjoy your wedding. I'm going home. Perfect, she smirked. Nathan and I won't have to be embarrassed by that dress in any more photos. Nathan, her investment banker husband of 3 hours, whom she'd met at a charity gala last year. He seemed nice enough the few times I'd met him, if a bit reserved. Currently, he was across the room talking with my father, both men looking serious despite the celebration. I caught his eye briefly as I headed for the exit, and he gave me a small nod. Was it my imagination, or did I see a hint of sympathy in his expression? As I pushed through the heavy doors of the ballroom, I heard someone call my name. It was Laura, my stepmother, hurrying after me in her too-tight gold dress. Maddie, wait. She caught up to me in the lobby. You're not leaving already, are you? The cake cutting is in half an hour. Laura was only 7 years older than me, a fact that had never stopped feeling strange. She'd been my father's executive assistant before becoming his wife, and while I couldn't blame her entirely for the dissolution of my parents' marriage, it was hard to separate her from the pain of that time. I'm not feeling well, I lied. Migraine coming on. Tell Dad I said goodbye. Laura frowned, her heavily made-up eyes narrowing with suspicion. He'll be disappointed. You know how important family is to him. I almost laughed at the irony. My father, Gregory Wilson, successful investment banker and family man, as long as the family in question was doing exactly what he wanted. His love had always been conditional, measured in achievements and social appearances. I'm sure he'll survive, I said. He has his star daughter today. Laura sighed. Maddie, I wish you wouldn't. Please don't, I interrupted. Not today. Just tell him I wasn't feeling well. I walked away before she could respond, pushing through the revolving door and into the cool evening air. The valet looked surprised to see a guest leaving so early, but retrieved my old Honda Civic without comment. As I slid into the driver's seat, I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror, eyes bright with unshed tears, cheeks flushed with humiliation. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who didn't belong at that wedding, in that family, in that life. The drive to my small apartment took 20 minutes, 20 minutes of replaying Brooke's mocking voice and the laughter of her friends. By the time I arrived home, I'd moved from hurt to anger. I kicked off my sensible heels, changed into sweatpants, and settled on the couch with a pint of ice cream and a bad movie. The perfect pity party. My apartment was tiny but comfortable. A one-bedroom in a converted Victorian house near the elementary school where I taught. My salary didn't stretch far in the city, but I'd made it home with secondhand furniture, plants, and colorful artwork from my students. It was nothing like the sleek downtown condo where Brooke lived, or the mansion where we'd grown up, but it was mine, paid for with my own hard work. As the movie played, my mind wandered back through the long history with my sister. Brooke had always been the golden child, excelling at everything she touched: academics, sports, social politics. I'd been the quieter sister, more interested in books and art than competition. Our parents had noticed the difference early and made their preferences clear. Why can't you be more like your sister? Mom would ask when I brought home a B+ instead of Brooke's A. Brooke never gives us this much trouble, Dad would sigh when I questioned his rules. But it wasn't just our parents. Brooke herself had made sure I understood my place in the hierarchy. When we were children, she would accidentally break my favorite toys. As teenagers, she'd spread rumors about me at school, ensuring I remained socially isolated. She'd even convinced my first boyfriend that I was emotionally unstable after seeing us together at a party. The pattern continued into adulthood. When Mom died, Brooke had somehow positioned herself as the primary griever, accepting condolences while I handled the practical arrangements. She'd also managed to borrow the money Mom had left specifically for my education, spending it on a trip to Europe with friends. Mom would have wanted me to expand my horizons, she'd explained when I confronted her. Dad, of course, saw nothing wrong with this. The movie ended, and I realized I'd been staring blankly at the screen, lost in memories. It was nearly midnight. The wedding reception was likely winding down now. Brooke and Nathan would be heading to their hotel suite, preparing for their morning flight to Bali for a 2-week honeymoon. Life would go on as it always had, Brooke winning, me retreating to lick my wounds. Not this time, I muttered to myself, digging my spoon into the now-melting ice cream. I'm done caring what Brooke thinks. It was a lie, of course. I'd been telling myself the same thing for 20 years, and yet here I was, hurt and humiliated once again. Some lessons take a lifetime to learn, or maybe some wounds never truly heal. I fell asleep on the couch, the TV still playing in the background, dreaming of a world where my sister saw me as an equal, where my father valued my choices, where the price of my dress didn't determine my worth. I must have fallen into a deep sleep, because the buzzing of my phone startled me awake like an electric shock. The clock read 2:17 a.m., and an unknown number lit up my screen. Thinking it might be an emergency, I answered. Hello. My voice was thick with sleep. Maddie? It's Nathan, Brooke's husband. His voice was tense, almost unrecognizable. I sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. Nathan? Is everything okay? Is Brooke all right? Despite everything, my first thought was concern for my sister. Brooke's fine. Well, not fine. She's passed out in our hotel suite. He sighed heavily. I need to talk to you. It can't wait until morning. My stomach tightened with anxiety. What's going on? Not over the phone. Can I come by your place? I know it's late, but how do you even know where I live? I interrupted, suddenly suspicious. Nathan and I had barely exchanged 10 sentences in the year he'd been dating my sister. Brooke's phone. She has your address and her contacts. Another pause. Please, Maddie. It's important. I hesitated. This was strange, beyond strange. My sister's brand new husband wanting to visit me in the middle of their wedding night? But something in his voice, a note of desperation, made me relent. Okay. I'm at 742 Maple Street, apartment 3B. The building's front door code is 5824. Thank you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone, wondering what I'd just agreed to. My apartment was a mess. Ice cream container on the coffee table, wedding clothes tossed over a chair, dishes in the sink from yesterday's breakfast. I scrambled to tidy up, then realized the absurdity of worrying about housekeeping when my sister's husband was making a mysterious midnight visit. I changed out of my sweatpants into jeans and a simple t-shirt, ran a brush through my tangled hair, and splashed water on my face. The woman in the mirror looked back at me with anxious eyes. What could be so urgent that Nathan would leave his bride on their wedding night? Exactly 20 minutes later, a soft knock at my door announced his arrival. I peered through the peephole, confirming it was indeed Nathan before opening the door. He stood in my doorway, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, though the bow tie was undone and hung limply around his neck. His dark hair was disheveled, and his eyes were red-rimmed, either from exhaustion or tears, I couldn't tell which. Thanks for letting me come, he said, stepping inside when I moved aside. I know this is weird. Beyond weird, I agreed, suddenly conscious of how small my apartment must seem to someone who frequented penthouses and country clubs. What's so urgent that you're at your wife's sister's apartment in the middle of your wedding night? Nathan paced my small living room, running his hands through his hair. He looked like a man on the edge of a breakdown. "Do you want something to drink?" I offered, unsure of the protocol for this bizarre situation. "I have water, tea, or wine." "Actually, I think there's some whiskey somewhere." "No, thanks. I've had enough tonight." He stopped pacing and faced me directly. "I made a terrible mistake today. I married Brooke." I blinked at him. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke." He finally stopped pacing and faced me. "I shouldn't have gone through with it. I knew it weeks ago, but everything was arranged. People had traveled. I convinced myself it was cold feet." I crossed my arms defensively. "Look, if you're having regrets, that's between you and Brooke. I don't see why you're here at 2 a.m. telling me about it." "Why am I here?" Nathan laughed humorlessly. "Because you're the only person who might understand. The only person who sees Brooke for who she really is." His words hit uncomfortably close to home. Did I see Brooke for who she really was? Had I always known, beneath the hurt and the jealousy, that my sister wasn't just privileged and entitled, but something worse? "I don't know what you want from me," I said carefully. He pulled his phone from his pocket, pulled up a video, and handed it to me. "Because of this. One of the groomsmen sent it to me an hour ago." I hesitated before taking the phone. This felt wrong, invasive. But curiosity won out, and I pressed play. The video showed the whole way outside the reception ballroom. Brooke and a man I recognized as her ex-boyfriend were locked in an intimate embrace, kissing passionately. The timestamp showed it had been taken just before the cake cutting, around the time I'd left the reception. "Oh my God," I whispered, my hand flying to my mouth. "Keep watching," Nathan said grimly. I did. The kissing continued, and then I heard Brooke's voice clearly. "I never stopped loving you, Mark." Nathan was just the sensible choice: stability, money, my father's approval. "But he's so boring." "Nothing like you." The male voice responded, "Run away with me tonight. After the reception. He'll never know until it's too late." Brooke laughed. "I can't do that. There's too much at stake. But we can keep seeing each other, like before. Nathan works constantly. He'll never suspect." I stopped the video, feeling sick. "Nathan, I'm so sorry." He sank onto my couch, his shoulders slumped. I confronted her at the hotel. She denied it at first, then got angry, said I was overreacting. When I told her I wanted an annulment, she threatened to tell everyone I'd been abusive, that's why she turned to Mark. He looked up at me, his eyes haunted. She said no one would believe me over her. "That sounds like Brooke," I said quietly, sitting beside him. "She's always been manipulative." I knew she could be difficult, but this. He gestured at the phone. "I never saw this coming." And then I remembered how she treated you at the reception. The things she said about your dress, making sure you weren't in photos. He shook his head. I should have seen the red flags. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Brooke has always been good at showing people what they want to see, until they're no longer useful to her. We sat in silence for a moment, two people connected only by their hurt at the hands of the same woman. "There's more," Nathan said finally. After I confronted her about the video, she got drunk, really drunk, and passed out. While she was unconscious, I checked her phone. He grimaced. "I know that's wrong, but I had to know if there was more I didn't know about." "And?" I prompted, though part of me didn't want to hear the answer. "I found texts between her and Mark going back months. They've been seeing each other the entire time we've been engaged." His voice caught. "She was with him the night before our wedding." The betrayal was so profound, so callous, that I struggled to find words. "I don't understand. Why marry you at all if she was in love with someone else?" "Money," Nathan said bluntly. "Security. Mark is a struggling artist. I'm a successful investment banker with family connections. Brooke wanted the lifestyle, not the husband." It made a horrible kind of sense. Brooke had always valued status and material comfort above all else. She learned that from our father, who measured success in dollars and cents. "I need your help, Maddie." Nathan's voice was earnest now. "You're the only one who really knows what she's like. Your father thinks she's perfect. My family is charmed by her. If I try to end this marriage, she'll destroy my reputation, my career. What can I possibly do? I asked. There's more. Nathan pulled out a USB drive from his jacket pocket. Last month, I found financial irregularities in our joint accounts. Money being transferred to offshore accounts. I tracked it. Brooke's been embezzling from my investment firm through access I gave her to help with our personal finances. My eyes widened. That's criminal. Exactly. I collected evidence, planning to confront her after the honeymoon. I was going to give her a chance to make it right. He laughed bitterly. I actually thought it might be some kind of mistake. I took the USB drive, turning it over in my hand. So, what do you want from me? Tomorrow, Brooke's going to wake up and either try to manipulate me into staying married or begin her campaign to paint me as the villain. His eyes met mine. I need someone to back up the truth. Someone who knows her character. Someone she's hurt too. I thought about all the years of Brooke's cruelty, the accidental destruction of my science project in 8th grade that won her first place, the rumor she spread in high school that I'd slept with my math tutor, which led to him being fired, the borrowing of the money our mother had left specifically for my education, which Brooke spent on a trip to Europe with friends. I also thought about what it would mean to publicly stand against my sister. The family fallout. Dad would almost certainly take her side. I'd be even more isolated than I already was. This is a lot to process, I said finally. What exactly are you asking me to do? Nathan leaned forward intently. If Brooke starts spreading lies about me, I need you to refute them. If she claims I was abusive, I need you to speak to my character. And if this goes to court, either for the annulment or the fraud, I need you to testify about her history of manipulation and dishonesty. You're asking me to testify against my own sister, I said slowly. I'm asking you to stand up for the truth, he countered. For justice. The weight of the decision pressed on me. On one hand, family loyalty had been drilled into me since childhood. On the other, that same family had never shown me the same loyalty. And what Nathan was describing went beyond Brooke's usual selfishness. Fraud and false accusations of abuse were serious crimes with real victims. I need to think about this, I said. I understand. Nathan stood up. But we don't have much time. Brooke is going to wake up tomorrow and she'll come looking for answers. He handed me a card with his private number. Call me when you decide. And Maddie? Thank you for listening. I know how hard this must be. After he left, I sat on my couch staring at the USB drive and his business card. The clock read 3:45 a.m. In a few hours, I'd have to be at school, bright and cheerful for 25 kindergartners who deserved better than a teacher distracted by family drama. I thought about Brooke in her perfect white dress, standing before friends and family vowing to love and honor a man she was already betraying. I thought about Nathan, discovering on what should have been the happiest day of his life that his new wife saw him as nothing more than a bank account. And I thought about myself, always on the outside of my own family, watching the golden child take while I struggled to be seen. I'll help you, I decided, though Nathan was no longer there to hear it. But not for revenge. For justice. I slept fitfully for the few remaining hours of night, dreams filled with wedding dresses that morphed into straitjackets and champagne flutes that shattered in my hands. The alarm blared at 6:30 a.m., leaving me barely 3 hours of sleep. I dragged myself through my morning routine, downing 2 cups of coffee as I prepared for the school day. My kindergarten classroom was typically my sanctuary, a colorful, joyful space where adult problems couldn't penetrate. But today, as I arranged materials for our butterfly life cycle project, I couldn't stop thinking about Nathan's revelations. The embezzlement accusation particularly troubled me. Financial fraud was serious, criminal, and completely at odds with the polished, respectable image Brooke had cultivated. But was it really? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Brooke had always taken what didn't belong to her. My toys as children. My friends in high school. My inheritance from Mom. She'd just graduated to larger targets. Mrs. Patel, the first grade teacher, poked her head into my classroom during prep period. Rough night? You look exhausted. I forced a smile. Just wedding stuff. My sister got married yesterday. How lovely. Though weddings can be draining. I hope you. She was interrupted by the classroom door slamming open so hard that it bounced against the wall. Brooke stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her designer jeans and silk blouse now rumpled, her carefully highlighted hair disheveled. Her makeup was smeared, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Mrs. Patel's eyes widened. I'll, catch you at lunch, she murmured, slipping past Brooke with an awkward nod. As soon as we were alone, Brooke advanced on me, her face a mask of fury. What the hell did you do? She demanded, her voice breaking with emotion. I set down the butterfly models I'd been arranging. Good morning to you too, Brooke. Shouldn't you be on your honeymoon? Nathan's gone. He left a note saying he's filing for an annulment and has evidence of criminal activity. He mentioned you by name. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. What did you tell him? The truth, I said simply. Something you've never been particularly fond of. Brooke laughed incredulously, a high, unhinged sound. He came to you in the middle of the night, and you believed whatever lies he told you? Are you that desperate for male attention? I felt my temper rising, but forced myself to remain calm. This was exactly how Brooke operated, pushing buttons, making accusations, turning everything around until somehow I was the villain. I saw the video, Brooke. With you and Mark. I heard what you said about Nathan. Her face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. It was nothing. Wedding day jitters. Jitters? I echoed. You told your ex-boyfriend that your husband was boring and that you'd keep seeing him behind Nathan's back. That's not jitters. That's premeditated betrayal. It was a momentary weakness, she insisted. I'd had too much champagne. Mark caught me off guard. Nathan's blowing it completely out of proportion. And the financial fraud? Was that jitters too? Now she looked genuinely alarmed. What are you talking about? The money you've been stealing from Nathan's firm. He has proof. Brooke's eyes darted around the classroom as if looking for an escape route. Then her expression hardened. She advanced on me until we were inches apart, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Listen carefully. If you help him destroy my life, I will make sure everyone knows what a pathetic, jealous sister you've always been. I'll tell Dad you're trying to ruin my marriage out of spite. You'll lose what little family you have left. The threat hung in the air between us. 3 years ago, even 1 year ago, it would have worked. The fear of losing my father's conditional affection, tenuous as it was, would have been enough to make me back down. But something had shifted. Maybe it was seeing Brooke's true colors in that video. Maybe it was the realization that my family had never truly been mine to lose. Or maybe I'd simply reached my breaking point after years of being the family doormat. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. Brooke blinked, clearly not expecting resistance. What did you say? I said no. I'm done letting you hurt people, Brooke. Nathan doesn't deserve what you're planning to do to him, and I don't deserve how you've treated me our entire lives. So you're choosing a man you barely know over your own sister? Her voice rose hysterically. Several students passing in the hallway turned to look through the classroom window. I'm choosing truth over lies. Right over wrong. I turned back to my work, arranging butterfly life cycle cards with hands that trembled slightly. You should go. My students will be here soon. Brooke stood frozen, as if she couldn't process that her usual tactics had failed. You're making a huge mistake, she finally said, her voice dangerously quiet. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I looked up at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. The perfect hair, the expensive clothes, the practiced expressions, all of it carefully constructed to hide the hollowness beneath. In that moment, I felt something unexpected, pity. I think I'm beginning to understand exactly what you're capable of, I replied. That's why I'm done being your victim. You'll regret this, she spat, yanking open the door. No, I said quietly as she stormed out. For the first time in my life, I don't think I will. My students began filing in minutes later, their bright voices and innocent concerns a welcome distraction from the emotional storm that had just swept through. We spent the morning learning about metamorphosis, how caterpillars transform into something entirely new. The butterfly doesn't just grow wings, I explained to their upturned faces. It completely breaks down inside the chrysalis and rebuilds itself from scratch. Does it hurt? Asked Lily, her forehead wrinkled with concern. I paused, considering. I think change often does hurt, but sometimes we have to fall apart before we can become who we're meant to be. The children nodded sagely, accepting this wisdom with the open-mindedness that made teaching them such a joy. If only adults could maintain that capacity for growth and transformation. At lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Brooke found you." I typed back, "Yes." It was ugly, but I'm in. His response came immediately. "Thank you. Meeting with my lawyer at 4. Can you join?" I looked at the butterfly models scattered across my desk. Metamorphosis. Breakdown and rebuild. "I'll be there," I replied. That afternoon, after my students had gone home, I sat in the polished conference room of a downtown law firm, feeling distinctly out of place in my casual teaching clothes. Nathan's attorney, Ms. Winters, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who radiated competence and skepticism in equal measure. "So you're willing to provide a character statement regarding your sister?" she asked, studying me over her reading glasses. "More than that," I said. "I'm willing to testify about her history of manipulation, dishonesty, and exploitation if needed." Ms. Winters exchanged a glance with Nathan. "And you understand what this might mean for your family relationships?" I thought about my father, who had always taken Brooke's side. About Laura, who followed his lead in all things. About the extended family, who saw me as the less successful Wilson daughter. "I understand," I said. "But some things are more important than preserving a family image that was never real to begin with." "Very well." Ms. Winters slid a legal pad across the table. "I need you to write down specific instances of your sister's dishonest or manipulative behavior. Focus on financial matters if possible, given the nature of the allegations." For the next hour, I documented a lifetime of Brooke's transgressions, from childhood theft to adult embezzlement. The science fair project she'd sabotaged. The tutor she'd gotten fired with false accusations. The inheritance she'd stolen. With each example, I felt a weight lifting, as if I'd been carrying these grievances for years without realizing how heavy they'd become. "This is very helpful," Ms. Winters said when I finished, scanning my pages of notes. "Mr. Reynolds has substantial evidence of the financial improprieties, but your testimony adds a crucial pattern of behavior." Nathan, who had been quiet throughout my recitation, finally spoke. "What do you think our chances are?" "For the annulment?" "Excellent," Ms. Winters replied. "Ms. Wilson has provided enough evidence of fraud in the inducement to invalidate the marriage. As for the financial matter," she frowned. "That's more complicated. We have proof of the transfers, but proving criminal intent will be challenging." "What about the video?" I asked. "Doesn't that show intent to deceive?" "It certainly helps establish character," Ms. Winters agreed. "But financial fraud requires specific intent. We need more." "The text messages," Nathan suggested. There were exchanges with Mark where she discussed planning for, after the divorce, talking about how much she'd get in the settlement. Ms. Winters's eyebrows rose. "That would indeed be relevant. Do you have copies?" "On my laptop at home." I took screenshots. "Good. Send them to me tonight." Ms. Winters began packing up her files. "I'll file the annulment petition first thing tomorrow. Ms. Wilson, we may need you to submit a formal affidavit." "Whatever you need," I promised. As we left the law office, the setting sun cast long shadows across the downtown streets. Office workers streamed past us, heading home to normal lives untouched by the kind of betrayal and revelation that had upended ours. "Thank you," Nathan said as we waited for the valet to bring our cars. "I know this isn't easy for you." "Strangely, it's easier than I expected," I admitted. "Maybe I've been waiting years for someone to finally see Brooke for who she really is." "I should have seen it sooner," he said ruefully. "There were signs." comments she made about people, the way she treated service staff. Little lies that seemed harmless at the time. She's good at hiding her true nature from people she wants to impress, I said. Don't blame yourself. Nathan's car arrived first, a sleek black BMW that somehow suited him without seeming ostentatious. Before getting in, he turned to me. This is just the beginning. Brooke won't go down without a fight. Are you ready for that? Was I? My entire life had been spent avoiding conflict with my sister, surrendering rather than standing my ground. This would be different. This would be war. I'm ready, I said, with more confidence than I felt. His smile was grim. Then let the battle begin. The battle began sooner than expected. I woke the next morning to my phone exploding with notifications, missed calls from my father, texts from relatives, and a barrage of social media alerts. Bleary-eyed, I opened Facebook to find Brooke had posted a lengthy status update overnight. Heartbroken to share that my husband has abandoned me just days after our wedding. Some people show their true colors when you're at your most vulnerable. Worse, I've discovered my own sister has been secretly meeting with him, feeding him lies about me out of jealousy. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind. Please respect my privacy during this difficult time. The post had hundreds of sympathetic comments and reactions. Several of our relatives had already weighed in with messages of support for Brooke and thinly veiled criticism of me and Nathan. My phone rang again. Dad. I hesitated, then answered. What the hell is going on? He demanded without preamble. Laura just showed me Brooke's post. Tell me you're not involved in whatever's happening with her marriage. Good morning to you too, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Have you actually spoken to Brooke about this? Of course I have. She's devastated. Says Nathan's trying to get an annulment and that you're helping him. That you've been feeding him lies about her. Did she mention that she was caught on video making out with her ex-boyfriend at the wedding? Or that she's been embezzling from Nathan's company? There was a long silence. Then, those are serious accusations, Madison. Do you have proof? Yes. Nathan does too. That's why he's filing for an annulment. Another pause. I'm coming over. We need to talk about this face to face. I'm about to leave for work. Call in sick. This is family. This is important. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, a knot forming in my stomach. Dad had used his banker voice, the tone that brooked no argument, that expected immediate compliance. I called the school to request a substitute, citing a family emergency. Then I made coffee and waited for the Inquisition to arrive. Dad showed up 40 minutes later, looking every inch the successful investment banker in his tailored suit and polished shoes. His silver-streaked hair was perfectly styled, his expression carefully controlled. Laura trailed behind him, looking uncomfortable in her designer workout clothes. Let's cut to the chase, Dad said as soon as I closed the apartment door. Brooke says you've turned against her. That you're trying to destroy her marriage out of jealousy. That's not true, I said calmly. Nathan came to me after he discovered Brooke's infidelity and financial fraud. I'm simply supporting the truth. The truth? Dad laughed humorlessly. Your sister just got married. She's building a life with a good man from a good family. What possible truth could justify trying to tear that apart? I took a deep breath. Nathan has video evidence of Brooke kissing her ex-boyfriend at the wedding. She told him she never stopped loving Mark, that she only married Nathan for his money and status. Dad's expression didn't change. Wedding day nerves. Cold feet. It happens. It wasn't just cold feet, Dad. She's been seeing Mark their entire engagement. And she's been stealing money from Nathan's investment firm. Stealing. Now his banker's facade cracked slightly. Financial impropriety was the one sin he couldn't easily dismiss. What are you talking about? Embezzlement. Nathan gave her access to their joint accounts, and she's been transferring funds to offshore accounts. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. Laura gasped. Dad shot her a silencing look. These are serious allegations, he said carefully. If Nathan believes they're true, he should handle it privately with Brooke. Why involve you at all? Because Brooke threatened to accuse him of abuse if he tried to leave her. She said no one would believe him over her. He needed someone who knows what she's really like. And you think you know your sister better than her own father? Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. Yes, I said simply. Because you've never wanted to see the real Brooke. You've only seen what you wanted to see, the perfect daughter who followed in your footsteps. Dad's face flushed. This is ridiculous. You've always been jealous of your sister's success. Always resented that she chose a practical career while you, he gestured dismissively at my modest apartment, chose this. This is a home I pay for myself, with a job I love, I said, feeling my own anger rising. And I've never been jealous of Brooke's success. I've been hurt by her cruelty, which you've enabled and excused her entire life. Cruelty? What are you talking about? The constant put-downs, the sabotage, the theft. You never saw any of it because you never wanted to. Laura, who had been silent until now, spoke up hesitantly. Greg, maybe we should listen. Stay out of this. Dad snapped, and Laura immediately retreated, physically taking a step back. I saw the dynamics so clearly then. Dad's absolute authority, never to be questioned. Laura's careful submission. The pattern that had been set in our household for as long as I could remember. Did Brooke tell you she stole the money Mom left me for education? I asked quietly. That she spent my inheritance on a European vacation while I worked 3 jobs to pay for college? Dad blinked, momentarily thrown. Your mother left that money for both of you to share. No, she didn't. The account was in my name only, specifically designated for my education. Brooke convinced the bank there had been a mistake. She forged documents, Dad. That's not sharing, that's theft. That's absurd. Brooke would never. Check the records, I challenged. The original account was titled Educational Trust for Madison Wilson. After Mom died, Brooke changed it to a joint account, then emptied it completely. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Dad's face. If there was a misunderstanding about the funds, I'm sure it can be resolved. But that has nothing to do with her marriage. It has everything to do with her character, I insisted. It shows a pattern of behavior. Brooke takes what she wants without regard for who gets hurt. Dad's phone buzzed. He checked it, then looked at me with renewed anger. Brooke just forwarded me messages from Nathan threatening to destroy her reputation and financial future, saying he has connections who can make sure she never works in finance again. May I see? I asked, holding out my hand. Reluctantly, Dad showed me the phone. The messages were indeed threatening and completely unlike Nathan's communication style. These are fake, I said immediately. Brooke created them to manipulate you, just like she's been manipulating everyone. That's enough. Dad exploded. I will not stand here and listen to you slander your sister. You need to decide where your loyalties lie, Madison. Either you support your family or you're against us. My loyalties lie with the truth, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. And if you're asking me to choose between honesty and blind family loyalty, then I've already made my choice. Dad's expression hardened into something I'd never seen directed at me before. Pure, cold disappointment. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Don't contact me or Brooke until you've come to your senses. He turned and walked out, Laura trailing behind him with an apologetic glance over her shoulder. The door closed with a decisive click, and I stood alone in my apartment, shaking with adrenaline and emotion. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Brooke's on the warpath. You okay? I typed back, just had a visit from my father. He's taken her side, as expected. I'm fine. The reply came quickly, I'm sorry. My lawyer says the annulment petition has been filed. Brooke will be served today. The storm was only beginning. Over the next week, Brooke escalated her campaign against us both. She gave a tearful interview to a local lifestyle magazine, portraying herself as the abandoned bride blindsided by betrayal. She created a social media narrative painting Nathan as controlling and emotionally abusive, and me as the jealous sister who'd always resented her success. Our extended family largely rallied around her. Aunts, uncles, and cousins sent me messages ranging from concerned, "Are you okay? This doesn't sound like you," to openly hostile, "How could you betray your own blood?" I stopped checking social media, unable to face the flood of misinformation and judgment. Meanwhile, Nathan's legal team was building their case. The financial evidence was damning. Once they knew where to look, they found a sophisticated scheme of transfers, hidden accounts, and falsified records. Brooke had stolen nearly $400,000 from Nathan's firm over the past 6 months. The DA is interested in the case, Ms. Winters informed us during a meeting in her office. Financial crimes of this magnitude fall under felony jurisdiction. You mean Brooke could go to prison? I asked, feeling a strange mix of vindication and distress. It's a possibility, Ms. Winters acknowledged. Though first-time offenders with good legal representation often receive probation and restitution orders instead. Nathan looked troubled. I don't necessarily want her in prison. I just want the truth acknowledged and my reputation protected. The criminal matter is separate from the annulment proceeding, Ms. Winters explained. But they're connected in terms of establishing fraud as grounds for invalidating the marriage. The court date for the annulment hearing was set for 3 weeks away. In the meantime, Brooke's public relations campaign continued. She appeared on a local morning show, expertly dabbing away tears as she described how her whirlwind romance had turned into a nightmare. I thought I knew him, she told the sympathetic host. But as soon as the ring was on my finger, he changed. Became controlling, suspicious. And then to involve my sister, to turn her against me. Her voice broke convincingly. Family is sacred. To lose them both at once is almost unbearable. I watched the performance with a mixture of disgust and reluctant admiration. Brooke had always been a skilled actress. It was how she navigated our family dynamics, school politics, professional relationships, always showing people exactly what they wanted to see. The day before the annulment hearing, I received an unexpected visitor at school. I was straightening up after the children had left when Laura appeared in my classroom doorway. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. I nodded, surprised. Laura and I had never been close. The age gap was too small for her to be a mother figure, and her relationship with my father had created an automatic barrier between us. She perched awkwardly on one of the tiny kindergarten chairs. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she said. "He'd be furious if he found out." "Why are you here, then?" I asked, continuing to organize art supplies. Laura twisted her wedding ring nervously. "I found something. About the money your mother left you." I stopped what I was doing, giving her my full attention. "I was organizing your father's home office, and I came across some old bank statements." She pulled a folder from her designer handbag. "I think you should see these." The folder contained statements from the account my mother had established for my education. The original designation was clearly visible: Educational Trust for Madison Wilson. Later statements showed the account name change and a transfer of $85,000, my entire inheritance, to a personal account in Brooke's name. "She did steal it," I whispered, touching the papers as if they might disappear. I always knew, but Dad never believed me. "There's more," Laura said quietly. "There's a letter from your mother's attorney questioning the transfer, and a response from your father authorizing it." I looked up sharply. Dad knew. Laura nodded, not meeting my eyes. "The letter says the attorney expressed concerns about the legality of the transfer, given the specific designation of the funds. Your father overrode those concerns." My hands trembled as I processed this revelation. Not only had Brooke stolen my inheritance, but my father had helped her do it. Had known all along that I was telling the truth and had chosen to lie to my face. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Laura. She looked up then, her expression troubled. "Because I've seen how your father and Brooke operate together. How they decide what the truth is and expect everyone else to fall in line." She took a deep breath. "I married your father because I loved him. I still do. But I've become complicit in things I'm not comfortable with. Like stealing from his younger daughter?" She winced. "Yes, and other things. Your father's not always the ethical businessman he appears to be. Brooke learned a lot from him, including some questionable financial practices. The implications were staggering." "Are you saying Dad might be involved in Brooke's embezzlement from Nathan's firm?" "I don't know the details," Laura said quickly. but I wouldn't be surprised if he advised her. He's always teaching her wealth management strategies that seem to skirt legal boundaries. Why tell me this now? I pressed. Why not 6 years ago when she took my money? Laura looked ashamed. I was new in the family then, still trying to establish my place. And to be honest, I was intimidated by Brooke. By both of them together. She gestured at the folder. But this annulment hearing, the accusations flying back and forth, it made me start questioning things. Looking more closely at patterns I'd been ignoring. Can I keep these documents? I asked. She nodded. There are copies. And she hesitated. I made copies of some other financial records that might be relevant to Nathan's case. Things that show your father's involvement in advising Brooke about offshore accounts. My heart raced. This was explosive information, potentially enough to not only secure Nathan's annulment, but also implicate my father in Brooke's financial crimes. Thank you, I said sincerely. I know this wasn't easy. Laura stood to leave. I should go. Your father's expecting me home for dinner. At the door, she paused. Madison? Be careful tomorrow. Brooke and your father, they won't take this lying down. They'll do whatever it takes to protect themselves. After she left, I called Nathan immediately. I have new evidence, I told him. And it changes everything. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30, clutching the folder Laura had given me. Nathan and Ms. Winters were already waiting in the lobby, reviewing documents at a small table. These are remarkable, Ms. Winters said after examining the papers I'd brought. They establish not only a pattern of financial misconduct by your sister, but potentially conspiracy involving your father. The judge will find this very relevant to the annulment petition. Nathan looked troubled. This goes deeper than I thought. Family dysfunction usually does, Ms. Winters replied dryly. The question is, are you prepared to use this information? It could have serious repercussions for Mr. Wilson. I thought about my father, his cold dismissal when I'd told him the truth, his years of favoring Brooke at my expense, his role in stealing my inheritance. Use it, I said firmly. All of it. We were heading toward the courtroom when I saw them, Brooke and my father, walking side by side like conquering generals. Brooke was dressed conservatively in a navy suit, her hair pulled back in a modest ponytail, the picture of the wronged professional woman. Dad looked stern and protective beside her. They spotted us at the same moment. Brooke whispered something to Dad, whose eyes narrowed as he caught sight of the folder in Ms. Winters' hands. What is that? He demanded, approaching our group. New evidence, Ms. Winters replied calmly. Relevant to the proceedings. Brooke laughed dismissively. More fabrications? You're really desperate, aren't you? Actually, I said quietly, they're bank statements, showing how you stole my inheritance. And how Dad helped you. The color drained from my father's face. Brooke's confident smirk faltered. That's ancient history, she stammered. It has nothing to do with my marriage. It speaks directly to character and pattern of behavior, Ms. Winters countered. Both central to the fraud claim in the annulment petition. Where did you get those documents? Dad asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I met his gaze steadily. Does it matter? They're authentic. You know they are. Dad's lawyer, a silver-haired man I recognized from his firm, approached our group. Is there a problem here? No problem, Ms. Winters said smoothly. Just some last-minute evidence to be presented to the judge. I'd like to review it first, Dad's lawyer insisted. You'll see it in court, Ms. Winters replied, checking her watch. Which we should be entering now. As we moved toward the courtroom doors, Brooke grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. You have no idea what you're doing, she hissed. This won't just hurt me, it will destroy Dad's reputation too. Is that what you want? I looked into her eyes, the same shade of blue as mine, yet somehow colder. What I want is the truth. For once in our lives. The truth? She laughed bitterly. The truth is you've always been jealous of me. Always resented that Dad loved me more. This is just your pathetic revenge. No, Brooke, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. This is justice. Something long overdue in our family. The bailiff called for order as we entered the courtroom. I took a seat beside Nathan, feeling strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I had chosen truth over comfortable lies, right over easy wrong. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding in my sister's shadow. I was standing in my own light. As the judge entered and the proceedings began, I glanced across the aisle at my sister and father. Their faces wore identical expressions of controlled anger and calculation. They had always been more alike than different. Two people who believed the rules didn't apply to them, that money and connections could smooth over any inconvenient truth. But some truths refuse to stay buried. Some injustices demand to be addressed. And sometimes, a simple dress becomes the thread that, when pulled, unravels years of deception. The judge called the court to order, and the battle for truth began in earnest. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, intimate enough that I could hear Brooke's nervous breathing from across the aisle. Judge Margaret Thornton, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, reviewed the documents before her with methodical precision. "This is a petition for annulment on grounds of fraud in the inducement," she summarized, looking up at both parties. Mr. Reynolds claims that Ms. Wilson concealed material facts that would have prevented the marriage had they been known. Ms. Winters stood. "That's correct, Your Honor. We have evidence that Ms. Wilson engaged in ongoing infidelity prior to and during the wedding itself, and that she entered the marriage with fraudulent financial intentions, having already embezzled significant funds from Mr. Reynolds' investment firm." Brooke's attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, rose immediately. "Your Honor, these allegations are preposterous. Ms. Wilson is the victim here, a new bride abandoned days after her wedding. Any financial irregularities can be explained as simple misunderstandings between newlyweds sharing accounts for the first time." Judge Thornton's expression remained impassive. "I'll be the judge of what's preposterous, counsel. Let's proceed with the evidence." For the next 2 hours, both sides presented their cases. Nathan's team went first, showing the video of Brooke with Mark at the wedding, followed by financial records detailing the suspicious transfers. Ms. Winters then introduced the documents Laura had provided, establishing a pattern of financial misconduct dating back to the theft of my inheritance. "Your Honor," Ms. Winters said, "we'd like to call Madison Wilson as a character witness." My heart raced as I approached the witness stand. After being sworn in, I faced the courtroom, Nathan looking encouraged, Brooke seething, and my father staring at me with cold fury. MS. "Wilson, please describe your relationship with your sister," Ms. Winters began. "Brooke is my older sister by 2 years," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We grew up in the same household, but have had a complicated relationship." "How so?" I took a deep breath. "Brooke has always been favored in our family, particularly by our father. She's been rewarded for behavior that would be considered troubling in most contexts: manipulation, dishonesty, taking advantage of others." "Objection." Brooke's attorney interrupted. "This is character assassination, not evidence." "It speaks directly to pattern and propensity, Your Honor," Ms. Winters countered. "Central to the fraud claim." "I'll allow it," Judge Thornton ruled. "Continue, Ms. Wilson." For the next 20 minutes, I detailed specific instances of Brooke's deceptive behavior, the science project sabotage, the tutor incident, and most significantly, the theft of my inheritance. "Are these bank statements authentic?" Ms. Winters asked, holding up the documents Laura had provided. "Yes," I confirmed. "They show how Brooke changed the name on my educational trust account after our mother died, then transferred all $85,000 to her personal account. Money specifically left for my education." "And what did your sister do with these funds?" "She spent most of it on a 3-month trip to Europe with friends." I glanced at Brooke, whose face had gone rigid. "While I worked 3 jobs to pay for community college." Judge Thornton studied the documents with a frown. "Was this theft ever reported to authorities?" "No, Your Honor." When I confronted my father about it, he denied any wrongdoing had occurred. I was 19 and had no means to pursue legal action on my own. The judge made a note, then nodded for Ms. Winters to continue. Ms. Wilson, based on your lifelong knowledge of your sister, do you believe she married Mr. Reynolds with honest intentions? I looked directly at Nathan as I answered. No. Brooke has always valued status and financial security above all else. She sees relationships as transactional. What can this person do for me? How can they advance my position? She's incapable of genuine commitment. When it was time for cross-examination, Brooke's attorney approached with a predatory smile. Ms. Wilson, isn't it true that you've always been jealous of your sister's success? No, I answered simply. I've been hurt by her cruelty, not jealous of her achievements. He looked skeptical. You expect us to believe that there's no resentment fueling your testimony today? That you aren't enjoying watching your successful sister's life unravel? I thought carefully before responding. I take no pleasure in being here, but I do believe in truth and consequences. My sister has hurt many people, including me, and has never faced any repercussions for her actions. How convenient that you found these old financial records just in time for this hearing, he pressed. Documents that supposedly prove misconduct from years ago. The documents were located by my stepmother, Laura Wilson, I clarified. She provided them to me yesterday. The attorney looked genuinely surprised by this information. He glanced at my father, whose expression had darkened further. No further questions, he said abruptly, returning to his seat. After I stepped down, Brooke took the stand. Gone was the confident, polished banker. In her place sat a vulnerable young woman, eyes brimming with tears, voice quavering with emotion. I love Nathan, she insisted, looking directly at him. Yes, I made a mistake at our wedding. I had too much champagne, and an ex-boyfriend caught me in a moment of wedding jitters. It meant nothing. And the financial transfers, her attorney prompted gently. Simple misunderstandings, she explained. Nathan gave me access to our accounts to manage our household finances. I was setting up savings for our future, for the children we planned to have. Her voice broke on the last words, and she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. And your sister's accusations about your character? Brooke's expression hardened momentarily before melting back into vulnerability. Madison has always struggled with feeling second best. I've tried to help her, to include her, but she's consistently pushed me away. As for the inheritance issue, that money was meant for both of us. I simply accessed it first. The performance was masterful, and for a moment, I wondered if Judge Thornton was being swayed. But when Nathan's attorney began cross-examination, Brooke's careful facade began to crack. Ms. Wilson, if the funds transferred from Mr. Reynolds' accounts were intended for your future children, why were they moved to offshore accounts registered solely in your name? Brooke hesitated. I wanted to surprise Nathan with how much I'd saved. A surprise of nearly $400,000? Money taken without his knowledge or consent. He gave me access to manage our finances, she insisted. Yet these transfers began 3 months before your wedding, when you had no legal claim to joint finances, Ms. Winters pointed out. And they coincided with frequent meetings with your ex-boyfriend, Mark Daniels. Brooke's composure slipped. That's not. You're twisting everything. I have here text messages between you and Mr. Daniels, Ms. Winters continued, holding up printed pages. Including one sent the night before your wedding that reads, once the accounts are fully transferred, we'll have enough to start over anywhere. Just a few more months of playing the dutiful wife. She looked up. Would you like to explain this message, Ms. Wilson? The courtroom fell silent. Brooke's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. Beside her, my father had gone deathly pale. That's taken out of context, she finally stammered. What possible context would justify planning to abandon your new husband after stealing his money? Ms. Winters pressed. Objection. Brooke's attorney called. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Judge Thornton ruled. Rephrase, counselor. Before Ms. Winters could continue, Brooke suddenly stood. This isn't fair. You're all against me. You've always been against me. She pointed at me, her mask of vulnerability completely gone. She's turned everyone against me because she's jealous. Because she could never measure up. Ms. Wilson, control yourself, Judge Thornton ordered sharply. But Brooke was beyond control. You think you're so righteous, she spat at Nathan. So perfect. You never appreciated what you had in me. And you, she turned to me, her face contorted with rage. You pathetic little nothing in your cheap dress and your kindergarten classroom. You think this makes you important? You're still nobody. Ms. Wilson. Judge Thornton's voice cracked like a whip. One more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. My father stood and approached Brooke, murmuring something in her ear. She shook him off violently. Don't touch me. This is your fault too. You taught me how to move the money, how to set up the accounts, and now you're going to let me take the fall. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Thornton banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. We will have order in this court. When silence finally fell, she fixed Brooke with a steely gaze. Step down from the witness stand, Ms. Wilson. Your testimony is concluded. After a brief recess, during which Brooke's attorney could be seen frantically conferring with both her and my father, Judge Thornton delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find clear and convincing proof of fraud in the inducement of this marriage. The petitioner has demonstrated that Ms. Wilson concealed material facts that would have prevented the marriage had they been known. Specifically, her ongoing romantic relationship with another man and her systematic embezzlement of funds. She shuffled her papers, then continued. I hereby grant the petition for annulment. This marriage is declared null and void as if it never occurred. Relief washed over Nathan's face. Beside him, Ms. Winters nodded in satisfaction. Furthermore, Judge Thornton continued, I am referring the financial evidence presented today to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible criminal charges. The court will also notify the Bar Association and financial regulatory authorities regarding potential professional misconduct. She fixed my father with a pointed look. This may extend to those who facilitated or advised on these financial improprieties. Dad slumped in his seat, the implications of her words clearly hitting home. Court is adjourned. Judge Thornton's gavel came down with finality. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Brooke and my father huddled with their attorney, faces grim. Laura stood apart from them, looking uncertain. When she saw me watching, she gave a small nod, acknowledgement of her role in bringing the truth to light. In the hallway, Nathan touched my arm gently. Thank you, he said simply. I know how difficult that must have been. Oddly enough, it wasn't, I admitted. It felt liberating. Ms. Winters approached with a satisfied expression. Excellent result. The annulment is final, and the criminal investigation will proceed. You should prepare for some turbulence in the coming weeks, Mr. Reynolds. Financial fraud cases tend to attract media attention. I can handle it, Nathan assured her. The truth is finally out. That's what matters. As we walked toward the exit, a reporter from the local paper approached. Mr. Reynolds, can we get a statement about today's ruling? Nathan glanced at Ms. Winters, who nodded slightly. Justice was served today, he said simply. That's all I wish to say at this time. The reporter turned to me. Ms. Wilson, how does it feel to testify against your own sister? I thought for a moment. Truth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary. Today wasn't about taking sides. It was about standing up for what's right. Outside the courthouse, rain had begun to fall, a gentle spring shower that felt cleansing somehow. Nathan offered me a ride home, but I declined. I think I need to walk a bit, clear my head. I understand, he said. I'll call you tomorrow? I nodded, watching as he walked to his car. Then I turned and began the long walk home, letting the rain wash away the tension of the day. The aftermath unfolded rapidly. By evening, local news outlets were reporting on the wedding fraud case, complete with quotes from anonymous sources about Brooke's character and behavior. My phone filled with messages, some supportive, others accusatory, from relatives, acquaintances, even old classmates who remembered Brooke's mean girl tactics from high school. I answered none of them, choosing instead to sit quietly on my balcony, watching the rain and feeling a strange sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I had stood firmly in my truth, regardless of the consequences. The burden of pretending that our family dynamics were normal, that Brooke's behavior was acceptable, had finally lifted. The next morning, I returned to my classroom, greeting my kindergartners with genuine smiles and renewed energy. Children have an uncanny ability to sense when adults are troubled, and several of my students had picked up on my distraction in recent days. "Ms. Wilson, are you happy today?" asked Lily, the observant little girl who had questioned whether metamorphosis hurt. "Yes, Lily," I answered truthfully. "I'm very happy today." "Did something good happen?" she persisted. I thought about how to explain complex adult situations to a 5-year-old. Let's just say I learned that sometimes standing up for what's right is hard, but it feels good afterward. She nodded sagely. Like when I told Tyler it wasn't nice to take Jamal's blocks, even though Tyler is my friend? Exactly like that, I agreed, impressed by her insight. It takes courage to tell the truth, especially when it might upset people we care about. But it's the right thing, she declared confidently. "It is indeed," I said, giving her a gentle hug. Now, who's ready to learn about butterflies? 3 months passed in a blur of legal developments and personal growth. The district attorney filed formal charges against Brooke for embezzlement and wire fraud. After initially denying everything, she eventually accepted a plea deal: restitution of all stolen funds plus a hefty fine, 5 years of probation, and loss of her banking license. My father faced his own legal troubles. The investigation into Brooke's finances revealed his involvement not only in advising her embezzlement scheme, but in several questionable business practices of his own. His reputation in financial circles, once sterling, was irreparably damaged. Several major clients withdrew their business, and the board of his investment firm asked for his resignation. Laura filed for divorce shortly afterward. "I married your father because I admired his strength and success," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "I stayed because I was afraid of life without those things. But watching you stand up for truth showed me that real strength isn't about money or power. It's about integrity." As for Nathan, he slowly rebuilt his life after the public spectacle of the annulment. His firm instituted stricter financial controls, and he threw himself into work, expanding his client base and developing new investment strategies. We stayed in touch, initially to coordinate on legal matters, then gradually transitioning to a genuine friendship. He began volunteering at my school's after-school program, helping older students with math and science. The work seemed to bring him joy, a different kind of satisfaction than his high-pressure banking career. 6 months after the courtroom showdown, Nathan invited me to meet him at a small cafe near my school. The autumn afternoon was perfect: crisp air, golden sunlight, leaves turning brilliant shades of red and orange. "How are the kids?" Nathan asked, stirring his coffee. He'd become genuinely invested in my students' progress, particularly Jamal, who had struggled with math concepts. "They're amazing." Jamal finally mastered his multiplication tables. I smiled, thinking of my student's proud face. "Thanks for working with him." "It's the highlight of my week," Nathan admitted. "Helps keep things in perspective." We fell into comfortable silence. Our friendship had developed naturally over the months, bonded initially by the shared experience of Brooke's betrayal, but growing into something more genuine. He appreciated my passion for teaching. I admired his patience with my struggling students. "I have something for you," he said suddenly, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small wrapped package and slid it across the table. Inside was a gift card to a boutique I'd once mentioned liking, but never shopping at because of the prices. "What's this for?" I asked, confused. "I remember what Brooke said about your dress at the wedding," he explained. "How much it hurt you. I thought maybe you deserved something nice, just because." I felt a lump in my throat. "That's very thoughtful, but..." "It's not charity," he said quickly, reading my expression. "It's a thank you for helping me see the truth before it was too late." For being honest when no one else would be. I looked down at the gift card, thinking about the dress that had started everything. Such a small thing, really. A piece of fabric that had exposed the truth about my sister led to a painful but necessary reckoning and, ultimately, to an unexpected friendship. "Thank you," I said finally, tucking the card into my purse. "But you know, that cheap dress turned out to be worth every penny." Nathan smiled, understanding. Sometimes the things that seem insignificant end up changing everything. And sometimes, I added, the people who mock you for what you wear end up revealing who they truly are. Outside, autumn leaves swirled across the sidewalk, golden and free. Like me. Conclusion: the dress that changed everything. If you'd told me a year ago that my $39.99 Target dress would become the catalyst for completely transforming my life, I would have laughed in disbelief. But sometimes, the smallest threads can unravel the most elaborate deceptions. The immediate aftermath of the court case was both easier and harder than I'd anticipated. Easier because the truth had finally been acknowledged. Brooke's manipulative nature, my father's enabling behavior, the years of gaslighting I'd endured. Harder because loss, even of toxic relationships, still carries grief. My father made no attempt to reconcile. His pride, always his defining characteristic, wouldn't allow him to acknowledge his role in our family's dysfunction. The last I heard, he had relocated to Arizona, starting over with a smaller investment practice and a much lower profile. Brooke's fall from grace was spectacular and public. The financial world has little tolerance for embezzlement, and her once promising career imploded overnight. After completing the terms of her plea deal, she moved to Los Angeles, reportedly trying to break into the entertainment industry. Her social media, once filled with professional achievements and luxury lifestyle photos, now showcased desperate attempts at influencer relevance. She never contacted me directly, though I occasionally received drunken, accusatory late-night texts that I left unanswered. Laura, surprisingly, became something of an ally. After divorcing my father, she returned to school to finish the business degree she'd abandoned when they married. "I spent years defining myself through your father's success," she told me. "Now I'm discovering who I am on my own terms." As for me, I continued teaching, finding increased joy in my kindergarten classroom. Without the weight of family drama and pretense, I had more emotional energy for my students, more creativity for my lessons, more enthusiasm for the small victories of early education. Nathan and I continued our friendship, carefully navigating the unusual circumstances of our connection. His volunteer work at my school expanded to organizing a math and science club for older elementary students, revealing a talent for education he hadn't known he possessed. "I've been thinking about a career change," he admitted one evening as we graded math quizzes together. "Banking has never made me feel the way helping these kids does." "You'd be an amazing teacher," I encouraged him. The finance industry's loss would be education's gain. Our relationship evolved gradually from friendship to something deeper. We took things slowly, both carrying scars from our experiences with Brooke. Trust, once broken, rebuilds itself in careful increments, not sweeping gestures. 8 months after that day in court, Nathan invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant we both loved. The evening was perfect. Good food, easy conversation, the comfortable rhythm we developed over months of healing together. "I've been thinking about something," he said as we shared tiramisu. "About your dress. The one Brooke mocked at the wedding. My famous Target special?" I laughed. "The dress that launched 1,000 revelations?" "Exactly." He reached for my hand across the table. It made me realize something important. The people who truly belong in our lives are the ones who see our worth regardless of packaging. Profound insight from polyester blend, I teased, though the sentiment touched me deeply. Very profound, he agreed with a smile. And it led me to another realization. His expression grew serious. "I'm falling in love with you, Maddie. Not because of what happened with Brooke, but because of who you are, your integrity, your kindness, your courage." The confession caught me off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Our connection had been building naturally, two people finding unexpected joy in each other's company. I don't expect you to feel the same way, he continued when I didn't immediately respond. And I know our history complicates things. But I wanted you to know, I do feel the same way, I admitted quietly. I've just been afraid to acknowledge it. Afraid of what it might mean, given how we came into each other's lives. We can't change how we met, he said, but we can choose what happens next. What happened next was a slow, deliberate building of something authentic. We didn't rush into romance, understanding that our foundation needed to be stronger than most. When we finally did start dating officially, it felt like a natural evolution rather than a dramatic beginning. A year to the day after Brooke's wedding, I found myself standing in front of my mirror, preparing for a charity gala Nathan had invited me to. The dress I wore was new, purchased with the gift card he'd given me months earlier. It was elegant but understated, navy blue like the Target dress, but made of flowing silk that felt luxurious against my skin. "You look beautiful," Nathan said when he arrived to pick me up. But you know what? You looked beautiful in the Target dress too. Brooke just couldn't see it. As we drove to the gala, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From humiliation to vindication. From family secrets to painful truth. From isolation to genuine connection. The venue was familiar, the same hotel where Brooke's wedding reception had been held. As we walked through the ornate doors, I felt a momentary flutter of anxiety, phantom echoes of that painful evening. Nathan sensed my hesitation. "We can go somewhere else if this is too much." I shook my head. "No. This is perfect, actually. A chance to create new memories in a place that once held only pain." Throughout the evening, we mingled with Nathan's colleagues and friends. No one mentioned Brooke or the scandal, old news in the fast-moving financial world. Instead, they asked about my teaching, showed genuine interest in my work with children, treated me as someone worthy of respect and attention. At one point, I excused myself to visit the restroom. As I crossed the ballroom, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirrored wall, a confident woman in a beautiful dress, standing tall, eyes bright with happiness rather than unshed tears. I paused, remembering the last time I'd stood in this room, feeling small and insignificant under Brooke's cruel mockery. The contrast between then and now was striking, not because of the dress, though it was admittedly nicer, but because of the woman wearing it. I had changed, grown stronger, more certain of my worth. That $39.99 Target dress hadn't just exposed my sister's true nature, it had revealed my own strength. The courage to stand for truth, even when it hurt. The integrity to choose right over easy. The wisdom to recognize that sometimes, the people who try to diminish you are actually showing their own limitations. When I returned to Nathan, he was deep in conversation with the school superintendent about educational initiatives. "Maddie has the most innovative teaching methods," he was saying, pride evident in his voice. "Her students' reading scores have improved dramatically under her guidance." The superintendent turned to me with interest. "We should talk about our district's early literacy program. We're always looking for fresh perspectives." Later, as we danced beneath the same crystal chandeliers that had witnessed my humiliation a year earlier, Nathan held me close. "Happy?" "Incredibly," I answered truthfully. "Though it's been a strange journey to get here." "The best journeys usually are," he observed. "And they rarely follow the path we expect." As we swayed to the music, I thought about all the threads that had led to this moment. A mother's death, a sister's cruelty, a father's favoritism, a dress that cost less than $40. Each thread on its own seemed insignificant, yet together they had woven the fabric of transformation. Life rarely gives us neat resolutions or perfect justice. My relationship with my father remained broken. Brooke had faced consequences but hadn't truly changed. The hurt of years couldn't be erased by a courtroom victory or a single moment of vindication. But perhaps perfect endings aren't the point. Perhaps the true victory lies in becoming who we're meant to be, in standing firmly in our truth, in recognizing our worth, in refusing to accept the diminished version of ourselves that others try to impose. That night, as Nathan and I walked hand in hand under a canopy of stars, I felt profound gratitude for my cheap dress and everything it had set in motion. Not because it had led to revenge or comeuppance, though Brooke had certainly faced both, but because it had catalyzed my own metamorphosis. Like the butterflies my students had studied, I had emerged from a chrysalis of family dysfunction and painful history. The process had been difficult, even agonizing at times, but necessary for true transformation. And now, I was finally flying free. If you've ever been made to feel less than by someone who was supposed to love you, if you've struggled to find your voice in a family that refused to hear it, if you've wondered whether standing up for yourself is worth the potential fallout, let my story be your encouragement. The truth may be painful, but living a lie costs far more in the end. Sometimes the most profound journeys begin with something seemingly insignificant, like a $39.99 dress from Target that changed everything. Thank you for watching this story. If it resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and standing up for yourself even when it's difficult. Remember that your worth isn't determined by others' opinions of you, and sometimes the people who mock you for what you wear end up revealing who they truly are.